They say never go back. Rubbish. To Paul Caddis, Charlie Austin, Andrew Hawes, Rob Angus, Tom Broadbent, Kev Metcalf, Tom Parrish, Vic Morgan, Hoops and Jonah, Les Caffrey, Joe Vincent, and the rest of the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge team, the Guinnesses are on me. Thank you sincerely, guys. And yes, it is so good to be back. Thanks also to you, my dear listeners. Nobody likes a dude seemingly flip-flopping around. And whilst I've been restacking my proverbial shelves, it never occurred to me I'd end up leaning on your goodwill and patience with this unexpected but very happy return to our show. To anyone else out there struggling, talk to someone, please. Well, listen, we've got a big team front and back of shop at Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge Towers, and we'll continue the hard work to keep you engaged, excited and delighted with all things Swindon Town moving forward. And in the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge tonight, we turn the focus back on us, the fans, after what's been a stellar week on the road for Swindon Town Football Club. Bradford and Mansfield away was always going to be a massive test of the team's promotion credentials and perhaps just as importantly, a test of fan patience, trust and belief. For many, it's been a distinction-based pass. Others remain a little unconvinced. So, with your help, we've got a packed show. 4 points from a double tough away fixtures. Stockport away in the FA Cup to preview. We've got cup success for the women versus Selsey to dissect. And that's just for starters. If social media is a valuable barometer, Scott Lindsey is winning over his critics. Has it clicked? How is Scott changing opinions? Will there be a discussion around formations, tactics? Dare I say it, promotion prospects tonight? Yeah, damn straight there will. You tell us your thoughts, and we're going to be rewarding the best calls from you lot with brand new print creations from the wonderful Dan Designs. We've got Annie Colston and Helena Diaz-Butcher joining us, and they're going to be in the house very shortly to discuss all things STWFC. And we're being joined by the inimitable Charlie Austin, all the way from Brisbane, Australia, for a long overdue Chazetta Football Australia. So how do you get involved, you may ask? For those of you that don't know, make sure you're listening on your smartphone Twitter app and hit the speaker request icon at the bottom of your screen when you've got something to contribute. Or simply tweet or DM us your point to @T_STBL. That's @T_STBL. And read out on your behalf. Or just sit back and enjoy us waffling. We're chuffed to have your ears either way. Joining me tonight, we have got an absolutely stellar cast. We have got Joe, a little later, literally in a few minutes, he's making his way back from the ring. We've got the champ, Ellis, joining us. We've got Chris, we've got Mike, we've got Rachel, we've got Max, and also a little later, we've got Arch. So who do I start with? Who wants to say hello? Joe, how are you? Let's start with you.
Good evening, Hannahs. Mate, your voice sounds perfect. It's like you've never been gone.
My voice sounds perfect.
It does, as always.
That's the first time anyone's ever said that to me. Chris, good evening. How are you?
I'm all right, good though, but how can the voice be better than the voice?
I don't know. Speaking of the voice, how is the voice?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm very happy to be a part of Hannah's glorious return to the lounge.
Oh, you beautiful, beautiful, beautiful man. And we've got Max with us right this moment as well. How are you, Max?
Yeah, no, it's good to have you back on the show. I'm very well.
It's always good to have a resident Doncaster fan in the on the show, Max. You know, there's no way you're a Town fan. I'm not buying it, but you're welcome nonetheless. You're welcome nonetheless. Well, listen, I mean, look, I don't think we should keep our first guest waiting, gentlemen. Do you really? We've also got the wonderful Lanes, and she scores when she wants. She scores when she wants. Annie Colston, she scores when she wants, providing Helena's setting her up with the assist. So how are you two, ladies?
Hello. I'm good, thank you.
Oh, Annie, bless you. Listen to your wonderful tones. How are you, Lanes?
Hi, I'm good, thanks.
Oh, the queen of the STWFC assists. So, ladies, what a week for Swindon Town Football Club, and no more so you good guys. You've racked up another win in the cup. Do you want to tell us all about it?
Go on, Annie. I'll leave you.
No, no, you can go first, Lanes.
It was a messy win. It was all right.
Yeah,
we fought to the end.
they
Yeah, for sure.
you very much did, didn't you? And much to the annoyance of Selzy, they didn't seem to quite like the amount of added time, from what I gather.
Could you tell? I think it was 90 plus 10, I want to say.
Yeah, I think it was. What were the reactions when the ball hit the back of the net?
I think it was more relief because I don't think anyone wanted to play for extra time.
Well, yeah, I think you're probably right, but nonetheless, it's another win and another step forward for you guys. So you said it was a messy game, Annie. It was obviously it didn't sound like a game of many chances for you. It sounded like you were feeding off scraps. So what was the sort of standard of the opposition like? Obviously, it was. The last time I saw you two playing, you were busy sticking sort of 10 goals past the opposition at the county ground. Very different game altogether this week.
Yeah, I think first half we dominated them. They went down to 10 men, and then second half, I think they were just well drilled. Second half, even with 10 men, we couldn't really click. I don't think it was just a scrappy game. We couldn't get a hold on the ball. But we're just glad we got the win, and everyone got out of there in one piece. So yeah, it was good to get through to the next round. So yeah.
Yeah, so Lanes, do you want to tell us about your yellow card?
She'd just come on and she had fresh legs and she was really good, to be fair. I think she came from QPR, so I had to take her out somehow. It was a dodgy foul, but
Are we saying that Lanes is the reason for 10 minutes of added time?
No,
you
he
take
got
her leg off?
Yeah, it's definitely Lanes.
And he got the player sent off in the first half.
Shithousery from the SCFC women's team, I see.
A win's a win.
What level were the opposition at? I mean, obviously, clearly, Portland Rovers were, a couple of levels below you guys. What level were Selzy at? If we were to sort of try and get a barometer for what sort of opposition you're up against this week, or last week, I should say now.
They're in our league. So the standard is pretty good. We played them first game of the season and we lost 3-1. And we've also got them this weekend as well. So they're a really good team, well drilled, hard team to play against.
And Annie, it's been obviously for you to go from sort of like, free scoring to a game where, as I say, you were sort of feeding off scraps. Was it was it a frustrating day for you? I mean, obviously at the end of the day, it's all about the team, right? And getting through to the next round. I'm sure you will tell me. But was it a frustrating afternoon for you? Like how was it for you personally?
I mean, you're kind of frustrating. I just wasn't in the right place at the right time for myself and for Lanes to obviously assist me. No, it was all right. It's stuff that we can learn from, me personally. But I always love scoring, and it's a bit of like a downer when I don't. So.
So Lanes, you sort of gave the impression it was a feisty game. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think we kind of had tired legs. We played on Thursday as well, so we were kind of a bit tired. So the last 20 minutes, I want to say, we were kind of chasing our tails. They did have most of the possession, so we were just kind of running after them, trying not to let them score. They did, but It was a bit.
And ultimately, I mean, if you're going to lose, if you're going to win a game, nothing sweeter than sort of literally striking right at the death. Was it a question of the ball hitting the back of the net and the final whistle going, and then there were broken Selzy hearts all over the place, or was there any kind of was there any last ditch action from Selzy trying to mad scramble an equaliser?
I genuinely don't think the whistle went straight away either. I don't think it was a last minute goal. I think it was a few more minutes after, but I think they were kind of tired at the end as well. They had been all over us. I think at the end we were just all kind of at the back trying to get rid of it.
So what was ultimately what generated the 10-minute stoppage time, Lanes?
I think there were about 5 yellows, and Annie's red was in the first half, so it wasn't that. Maybe 5 yellows, and then one of their players got injured, and I think the ref just didn't want to play another half an hour, so it was kind of like golden goal going on.
That's what it felt like.
A little bit of golden goal action. Wow, now there is a blast from the past. What's I mean, personal highlights for both of you ladies from the game. Anything in particular sort of stuck in your mind? Obviously, you weren't obviously, I say frustrating, Annie. A very rare weekend off of the goal charts for you. But was there anything from the game in particular sort of sticks out? Anything you'd like to share?
I just think from the girls as a whole, like our resilience to just keep going, keep battling, and just getting that win. I think last season it would have been a very different scoreline, especially after about 60, 70 minutes. But this season, all the girls really fighting for each other, fighting for the wins every single game. It's just nice to see that through and then be rewarded with it as well.
So, I mean, look, Annie, there's a lot of changes going on with Swindon Town Women's FC. Lots of changes. Clearly, there is a striving for it to be more professional. There are going to be lots more games at the county ground now, lots more games at Foundation Park. What are the kind of as someone that is played sort of played further up the leagues elsewhere around the country, what are the things that you are seeing that are sort of tangibly changing that you would want Swindon Town, that maybe fans of Swindon Town Football Club men's football that haven't yet seen a women's team, what sort of things are you seeing as that change is going on, as you're starting to metamorphosize into a far more professional outfit? What are you seeing?
Do you know what it is? The girls are just, I think the togetherness of the club is just growing and growing. You can see that we're all fighting to be a part of the team and to be like an active member of the team. And I don't know, we're just striving every single game. Training is like unbelievable at the moment. The amount of players we have at training is crazy. Like we had, I think, 24 first team on Tuesday. You can see like the environment is just growing and it's such a good place to be at the moment. So I think we just want to continue building on that and like setting strong foundations so that, if when we do progress up the leagues, like we're in the right place to be doing that.
And so I don't want to necessarily sort of suggest that you were struggling to get guys to training sort of previously. That's probably going to be the wrong language. But what do you think is driving such big sort of numbers and such commitment from your squad mates, Annie?
I think it's just everyone sort of found the love for the game again. It starts from the top with the management right down to like the under 18s. The togetherness for the squad is so good at the moment. Like we all interacting with each other, and I haven't been at a club that's felt so much like family before, and I think all the girls are feeling that, which is just making everyone want to turn up and try their best in training, try the best in the games, and just be a great part of the squad.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we haven't had a chance to talk about, we won't do a big in-depth sort of deep dive into Portland Rovers, but Lanes, coming back to you, a few of us from the show were lucky enough to be pitch side with you after Portland. It truly was lovely to see both yours and Annie's and all of your teammates' faces. I mean, that meant so much to you, didn't it, after the game? Can you try and put it into words what that meant? Can you try and sort of describe the feeling of sort of standing there standing there in front of getting on for 800 fans, a brand new record. I mean, that you've got, I guess, the intimidation factor before you went out there, but then you thumped Polton for 10. You've got this brilliant win under the floodlights, beautiful canvas the game's been painted on. What did that mean to you?
It was so surreal. It was kind of like, we're kind of used to, like, I think we had like 200 fans at like Foundation Park, which was a lot for us, and that was really nice to see. And then obviously having, I think it was 720, it was crazy. And then like after the game, like having people like, compliment you and then like wanting photos and stuff. It was surreal. We can't wait to do it again, honestly. Like after the game, like we were all so buzzing. We went out, celebrated it. It was just a really good day.
Oh, tremendous. Well, listen, I mean, Annie, obviously, again, as someone that's played up the leagues, I had a big smile on my face when you were being dragged off to complete your media duties. I know when you and I first met, it was quite clear that, let's just say, if we were to say that Lanes was the gregarious individual, you were a little bit more camera shy. What's how surreal was that, sort of standing in the county ground, sort of complete? I mean, you sounded like a natural on the mic, but what was that like for you post match?
I hated it. No, I loved it and hate it at the same time. I'm just not used to this thing, and I think people don't realise that the group of players that we have, we're not exposed to media. We've not been trained on this. I think that's the first time properly after the game that I've ever had people come up to me and ask for a photo. So it's all so new. But yeah, I'm just taking it in my stride, literally just trying to get better all the time. I was so nervous just to come on here today. So
And I remember your very first interview with the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge when we were on. I think we were midweek before a Papa John's trophy, and
yeah,
that, not being disparaging about Lanes at all. Obviously, not everybody is like a natural sort of speaker, like, you know, comfortable speaking in public environments. You clearly do your speaking on the pitch, and certainly in front of goal, because you just literally, well, as I was going to say, can't stop scoring, but I don't either want to jinx you for the rest of the season.
yeah, I'll be coming for you if you jinx me now.
Sure you will. I'm sure you will. So, well, listen, guys, look, there is nothing that we would love more, as you know, obviously, I think everyone that listens to the show is aware now that you're very much part of the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge family. We've been sponsoring you now for a number of weeks, and that's going to continue infinitum as far as we're concerned. So we would love nothing more than for you both to hang around and be as much a part of tonight's show as we can. We've got a very, very, very busy show. As I mentioned right at the very, very start, the plan is tonight, my dear listeners, to stimulate as much debate with as many of you guys as possible. We have got a bumper panel. And as I say, we've got various special guests that hopefully are going to drop on during the night. So we've already got Lanes and Annie with us. If there's any questions you would like to ask about all things Swindon Town Women's FC, be that recent results or be that future developments and so on and such like. We're a live show. This isn't recorded, so please don't feel nervous by that. But please, there is a little bit of a caveat. If some of our guests can't answer your questions, don't be offended. There's probably very good reasons for that. And we as a panel will be more than happy to try and sort of like tackle any questions you might be putting to us. But I mean, listen, to get the ball rolling, I'll go back to my team. I mean, Chris, talk to me. I mean, I'm probably best if we have a little chat about the small matter of a rather interesting day in Nottinghamshire. Would that seem like a fair place for us to move on from the success of Swindon Town Women's Football Club?
As long as you're talking about the football and not my shirt.
Yeah, now listen. Now, that was quite something, pal, that was. If you're telling me you can't explain that, Mark.
No, and Luke, who I see is listening here, he will vouch for me that I didn't eat anything, but somehow I had a food stain on my shirt.
Are you sure it was food? It kind of looked like you've been servicing a vehicle with that shirt, Chris.
I honestly do not know what it was. It just appeared.
You definitely did a Jurgen Klinsmann style celebration, didn't you, after Willow's first goal?
Hey, good chance, but I did have a few beers, so my memory's hazy.
Oh wow! Okay, well you were on celebrity duties as well, Chris. You were up there taking pictures, signing autographs, the face of the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge in Nottinghamshire, which was a true delight to see. But I mean, obviously, look, Chris. I mean, the highlights, as far as I could see, obviously we had there was the best part of 800 Swindon Town fans in attendance up in Nottinghamshire, and I listened with great interest to both Fools Rush In and the Low Strangers takes on how many people were actually queuing up at the ticket office, and they sense, I don't want to use the word skullduggery, but they sense a little inaccuracy today in terms of the number of Swindon Town fans that were possibly in attendance, and it was just a pulsating performance. Obviously, Town lined up with Sol Bryn in goal, Romeo Hutton, Kieran Brennan, Clayton and Ellis Andelo across a back four, and then a midfield of Ronan Darcy, Saidu Khan, Gladwin and Johnny Williams in a diamond formation with Khan the pivot point at the back. And then up top, a devastating duo of Jakey Wakes and Mr. Jeff Cott himself, who both performed. I mean, I don't think there was anyone across the park that performed in any other way than just brutally, devastatingly efficient. So, Yeah, ultimately, guys. I mean, look, this is for us to pick apart. I mean, we've got, first of all, I mean, obviously we've got. I'm going to go with the Low Strangers. By the way, without a shadow of doubt, 3 assists for Wakeling, and his link-up play with Luke Jeffcott was absolutely outstanding, giving us absolute Doyle and Yates vibes once again. Probably the most since both players have arrived at the club and played together. We've got a couple of Willow tap-ins. We've got a Luke Jeffcott zinger. We've got Ronan Darcy with an absolute shit pinger. And then we've got Ben Gladwin off the mark for the season as well, pushing us up the 4th. And the only downside of the day was obviously Tommy Clayton hobbling off with injury to be replaced by an almost faultless and polished Matthew Bowdery, depending on who you speak to. So, I mean, listen, Chris, you were there. What were the vibes like on arrival? I mean, I think was it the usual kind of, we're away from home, I'll be happy with a point?
Well, I suppose before the game, if you probably would have offered a point, I would have taken it. And certainly about 34 seconds in, I would have taken a point. But despite that very slow start, just the performance to a man was outstanding. Easily the best performance of the season. But, I mean, we scored 5 and we could have been 6 with it right at the end when Morgan Roberts hit the crossbar as well.
Yeah,
I think what says it all as well, Chris, is the fact that you've seen multiple Mansfield fans on Twitter and on socials just absolutely, preaching about Swindon, saying they're the best side they've seen at the ground this season. I mean, a lot of them pushing us through automatics, and that's nice to see from away fans or opposition fans, really, coming off the back of some Bradford fans saying that we're tin pot.
Well, the thing is though, after the game, I suppose we were probably there for an hour and a half after the game, back in the pub.
Yeah.
And a lot of them came up to them and they were saying the same thing. Football, we play football. And it's obviously League Two's got a bit of a reputation of teams not playing football in that way. And they were speaking of us. A few of them were grumbling about the referee, but most of them were very complimentary about how we played. And we just said on the day, they were just beaten by the better team.
Even 11 v 11, it was a good game of football. Both sides were playing the right way. I think, there wasn't really a scrappy goal. You could say maybe the Willows' second goal was a bit scrappy, come off the post, and maybe, I know Mansfield were felt a bit aggrieved because they thought the ball would go out and play. But all the goals were good quality goals.
Oh, yeah, they were as well. And obviously the 2 tap-ins. But it's the case, there were obviously one was a great save by the keeper that just dropped it at Johnny Esther's feet. And the other one, obviously, like you mentioned, came back off the woodwork. But it was just so well worked as well.
I mean, the first goal was, as you say, was a tap-in, but how well has Wakeling done to carry the ball from the halfway line? He's beaten 2 or 3 men and he's got his shot away. Obviously, we've said it before on the show, I can't wait for Jake to notch, because I think if he notches, he's going to go on a massive streak of scoring. Every game he's getting closer.
Well, over the course of Bradford and Mansfield, he could have had 3 or 4. It's just not gone for him at the moment. But if it's not going in for him, he's making them for others. So, that's fine as well. But and I've mentioned more than once as well that I just think that when he was playing out on the right, we were just wasting what he brings. And you've just seen for the last 2 games how much more he creates and how better he is going straight through the middle.
I mean, Chris, you're absolutely bang on, and hats off to Joe Acklam, who's done some fantastic work. Joe from Total Swindon has done some brilliant analysis on it's interesting because My Sound Trauma is just hello, good evening, My Sound Trauma. Thank you very much for your DM. He was saying that the vibe on the supporters buses was that Johnny got man of the match. Typically, I'm guessing, down to his 2 goals, which tends to sort of sway popular opinion, but that he had gone for Romeo Hutton, who actually was my selection on the day. But a tip of the hat to Luke Jeffcott, who Joe Acklam was saying essentially won us the game with the absolutely ridiculous movement. And I think there's no surprise for me that Jeffcott's sort of, getting those kind of plaudits with where someone's had a deeper soak on the tactics, because if you pay attention to the amount of work and movement that Jake Wakeling put in on Saturday, I mean, Jeffcott can't have failed to have capitalised on the spaces that Wakeling. I mean, Wakeling's movement would have been causing absolutely havoc. Was it that obvious from the stands, Chris?
Well, certainly I think it was the first goal as well, wasn't it? When Wakeling picked the ball up in our own half and just the space in front of him, like you'd say, because Wakeling was pulling the markers away, and it just gave him the space to run for. And we know, like with Jake, there's only one way he's running, and it's in a straight line. The quickest way to the goal.
Everything he's done there from a striker's point of view, I mean, speaking as an ex-goalkeeper, he's done everything to make a goalkeeper's life hard. I mean, it's a hell of a finish if you're going to be able to finish across the goalkeeper into the bottom corner. Chris Pym's made a spot-on stop, but clearly what you're going for is making sure you've got people following in on the rebound, and obviously there was Johnny. But I'll try and bring Max. I want to try and bring you in if I can at this stage, mate. Obviously, 30 seconds gone though, it looked very, very different, didn't it? With the ball in the back of the Swindon net and people cursing an absence of Swindon Town players in the left back position as the ball hits the back of the net. What were you thinking? What was going through your mind at that stage?
No, we've got a centre midfielder playing left back. I know. I'm not a fan of having Ellis at left back a lot of the time because it's situations like that where he gets caught out because his weakest side when he's playing as a left back is his positioning. And to be fair, we've conceded that sort of goal quite a few times this season. I think back to I can't remember which one it was at home, but it was a home game. We conceded one quite early, which was very similar to that, where there's just a man open on that side. But I wasn't too worried because I know there's goals in this team. Like I was thinking about Jeffcott and like how he talked about his movement, and it's the first time we've kind of had a striker like that probably since Doyle, who you find him in the box and he's going to have good movement to get away from his centre back and get into a position to score, then he's going to do it most of the time. And it says it all that I think he's our second top goal scorer, and he hasn't been here for the full season. And how much better is Hutton? And how much better is Hutton? And how much has Hutton improved as well from the start of the season?
I think with Hutton,
the Marcel Lavigne factor, isn't it, for Romeo Hutton? It'd be very very lazy and glib for me to talk about Marcel Lavigne and Romeo Hutton, but I don't think it's any surprise that Hutton's form has gone through the roof at a time where he's got a former Tottenham Hotspur Jose Mourinho disciple sort of turning up the heat directly behind him. What went through? I mean, Max, we suffer again the curse of a former player coming back to score against us, which seems to be the perennial curse at Swindon, with former loanee from Derby, Kellen Gordon, knocked in, as I say, after 30 seconds. Wasn't it?
Yeah, but you might as well put it on your betting slip every time we have a former player coming up against us. Like, it was just one of those. It's probably the easiest goal he'll ever score in his life, just because he had so much time in space, and they did well because it was a rebound off. I think it might have been Gladwin over sort of the right hand side that led to them getting the easy ball in. From what I remember.
See, the other thing about talking about this, when you think about it, you just how things are going now, and you think that we were playing Ronan Darcy at right back earlier in the season. And then we see that Hutton's playing now. How has it changed that quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like Anna said. I think that he probably got a bit of a wake-up call from the fact that he didn't start the best, and then they bring in a right back. So he's probably thought that they're trying to get me out the spot here. So I think he's probably just bucked his ideas up a bit in training, and then he's proved himself, hasn't he? I mean, you can't really drop him for Lavigne as much as Lavigne's got the pedigree.
It's a bit like the Luke Shaw factor, isn't it? When Luke Shaw has a crap season, United bring in a new left back, and suddenly he's ace again.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt for Romeo. We were very, very unlucky with injuries in the left-back department. And obviously, those have been eased significantly by the introduction of Fraser Blake-Tracy. Tom Clayton, who's with us tonight, listening in. Tom, good evening, pal. Everyone's aware that Tom's got a left peg and that if needs be, Tom can play over there. So, I think as the season's sort of like rumbled on, fantastic. But Romeo's a predominantly right-footed player, and he was being asked in pre-season to be playing on the left-hand side. And I don't think that, if your left foot is only really for standing on, and Romeo probably won't thank me for saying that, but if your left foot is only really for standing on, you're not going to be overjoyed to be stuck in a left back position, are you? You know, it's. I mean, Ronan was saying earlier in the season, it's not necessarily the hardest position to learn how for a midfielder to transition over to right back, but I think for a right back to transition over to left back, if you're predominantly right footed, that's going to be a big ask, right? Because I mean, that affects everything. It kind of makes you a little bit one-dimensional because you've got to come inside all the time. If you're trying to go sort of like trying to play a ball down the wing, you're trying to do that with the outside of your foot, and that's going to be tricky. So I kind of felt for Romano at the start of the season. But, I mean, yeah, I mean, if I wouldn't, I mean, Marcel Lavinier must be working his absolute knackers off in training at the moment to just keep up with the pace that Romeo Hutton's setting, because the standard that we've got on that right flank is so high.
Well, we saw what Lavinier brings in that. If anyone watched the Pizza Cup game against Bristol Rovers, it was outstanding in that game, and but you just notice so that if anything happens to Hutton, then we've got another classy player to bring straight back in.
It's one of those ones we say every week that we've got a big squad and we've got a really a squad for the quality of the season, but I also think we've got a squad full of intelligence as well. I think the thing that probably makes Luke Jeffcott so good is that he's such an intelligent striker. He pulls away defenders when we're attacking. The amount of times you see Jake Wakeland drive through the middle, and he has the space because Luke Jeffcott has drawn away the defenders out wide. It's just intelligence. It's pure football IQ, and I think it runs through the squad.
I feel like that's something that we've been waiting for this whole season as well. Like ever since we signed someone like Jeffcott, and since we saw the levels that Wakeland can reach as well, seeing them playing in front two is something that I've seen the fan base want. Ever since they've arrived, and it really just feels like something's clicked. Like this is a performance that I feel like we've all expected us to have at some point in the season, and to do it against opposition like Mansfield, I feel like it's a sign that hopefully we'll continue in this sort of level for the rest of the season.
Well, listen, I mean, look, I'll just whilst we're straying into an area that's going to be of rich debate, so I'll just put it out there again. Tonight's show, the success of tonight's show, guys, is really going to depend on a lot of you guys, those of you that are willing to come on and share your wider view. Whilst we've got a very rich and numerous panel with us this evening, we want as many of your voices and your opinions as possible. So please do hit that speaker request button if you've got something to add. I've got a feeling we're going to probably have people wanting to chip in for the next point. And you've kind of touched on it, Mike, which is people crying out to see Jeffcott and Wakeling playing up front together, and people crying out supposedly for the diamond formation in midfield. And that's, and essentially that is our route to success. And I kind of feel for Scott Lindsey here, because Scott in many ways has obviously performances have been maturing as the team's been gelling and the team's been progressing. Poor old Scott, he seems to struggle in some quarters to attract a compliment for the hard work that he's putting in, and his most ardent critics have, of course, thrown themselves on the hill of, well, we always knew that things would work if we're playing in a diamond formation, etc., etc., etc. I mean, look, Ellis, probably a good time to introduce you, mate, at some stage. Are you with us, Ellis? How are you?
I am indeed. Yeah, sorry I was late.
Not at all. But if you get my vibe, Ellis, I'm kind of saying that, listen, to what extent can we give just Scott the benefit of the doubt, give him the break, and say, hang on a minute, we're fourth in the league for a reason. There are a lot of people. I guess what I'm trying to say is people seem to be a little reluctant to want to accept a little dose of humble pie.
Yeah, I think you're bang on there. I think the moment he was sort of announced as manager, people were trying to find excuses as to why it wasn't going to work and why he's not the manager for the job. But as the weeks go on, he's proven everyone wrong, and he's the squad is just it's sticking, it's gelling, and in the last game I think it was just that final click, if you know what I mean. And it was never going to happen in 1 week, 2 weeks. It was going to take time, and I think we're seeing it now. I think as a fan base, we shouldn't expect it to happen every week now, because it's not going to happen every week. But it was nice to see that that 4-4-2 diamond on Saturday. Like you said, Hannah, is a formation that a lot of people have been calling out for. I like it. I like Wakeland playing up top. I sometimes feel like he can sort of get lost when he's playing out wide. So it's nice to see him sort of in and around the goal area, especially with Jeffcott. Yeah, it was something clicked in that game, and we've got an exciting squad there.
I think one thing to remember as well is the obviously in that sort of game, Mansfield were playing a bit further forward. Now, a lot of teams are going to come to us at the county ground and are going to sit back, and it's not going to be quite as easy as that.
Yeah,
so that's where the patience is needed.
Yeah, that's probably one of the main reasons why we sort of not struggle at home, but sort of. Well, yeah, sort of struggle to sort of score more goals, because teams just come to the county ground and just sit back, and you can see when we get an early goal, that helps us, because it sort of forces them, it forces the opposition to put it on us a little bit more and create something. So when they
Ellis, people have also said this season. I mean, members of the first team squad have said that, you know, there has always been, and we've had a few legends that have kind of come out and said this on the show as well, that at League Two level, we are a huge club. And to some of these lads that turn up at Swindon Town, this is like a cup final to them. So they actually
100%.
So not only are they kind of like digging in, if you will, but they're also probably playing at, you know, maybe 110% what they'd normally be putting in, which, you know, is tricky, right? And then you've got the other element as well, which was a few of the lads from last year's squad mentioned at the end of season awards, which was, if you look at, you know, I mean, I know that there's clearly, you can see that we're a bigger unit this year. If you look at the squad, you know, the team physically looks bigger than it did last year. But we're still playing against teams that have got some absolute monsters in there. And, you know, we are a team of technicians. I know I'm not talking Gulliver's Travels here, but if you there's, you know, we've got a lot of, you know, slighter players. I mean, even, you know, again, I mentioned Tom, who's listening in tonight. I mean, the vernacular around Tom when he arrived at the club as someone that, you know, is now making a cracking name for himself as a centre back was, well, we need to get this guy on the Guinness. So, you know, it kind of, I guess it's an interesting point, Ellis, isn't it? Like you said, it's a question of people raising their game, but also, yeah, people digging in. But yeah, I mean, I'm picking up on what you're saying about Jake Wakeland. I mean, Jake's not a winger, is he? I mean, we've drawn comparisons with Jerry Yates and Owen Doyle. I don't think Jerry ever actually played like a winger, did he? When he was playing slightly wider withdrawn role. And I think what you saw on Saturday was a little bit more what we saw with Jerry, where he was playing a little closer to Owen Doyle, i.e. with Jake playing a little closer to Jeffcott as well.
Yeah. So it's not when he's playing out wide. It's not that he does a bad job, because he doesn't. But it just feels like it's sort of wasted potential, if you know what I mean. Because you know, we've seen it. You know he's got you know he can score goals, and he's a threat. He's quick, and he's a player that you want sort of more in the middle, I think.
It just the thing that I love about Jake Wakeland is that he's like, it's like he's eating a pack of, like, you know, double D batteries and the jury. Like, you are literally talking about a lad that's going to go for 95 minutes.
He doesn't stop,
mate. He has got the most unbelievable motor on him, hasn't he? The most unbelievable motor, and he must be a strike partner's dream as well, because he's everywhere. And actually, he's, you know, when you sort of stood side by side with him, he's a stocky little bastard as well.
Yeah.
He's a proper ratter, you know. Like he's not an easy touch for a young kid that's got relatively kind of limited professional game experience.
Yeah, think what that sort of causes for the defenders as well. Like, if you're a centre back and you've got a striker running rings around you, it's going to throw you off.
I'd imagine it's quite dizzying watching and playing with Jake.
Yeah.
As Hannah says there, it's kind of like you sort of imagine him like a bit of a Jamie Vardy in the change room, just chugging Red Bull before a game because he just doesn't stop. And I think if you're a defender, especially a lot of League Two defenders, kind of probably knocking on the end of the career. If you're a 35, 36-year-old lump at the back, you're not lasting half an hour with him.
And even better, we've got him for 3 years, so no complaints there at all.
No, I try and bring. Annie and Lanes. Hopefully, if you two ladies are still with us, Annie, as somebody that's become prevalent of putting the ball in the back of the net, I'm going to call you the Luke Jeffcott of the partnership here, and obviously Helena, slightly different positionally from Jake Wakelin, but Annie, how important is it to kind of have someone like? Because Helena's got very, very similar playing attributes to Jake Wakelin. Great motor, loads of pace. What is that like on the pitch when you're the person that is like literally up there sort of trying to sniff out a goal? How important is it, or how, psychologically, can you see the impact it's having on the opposition when you've got somebody just going at them constantly like Lanes does?
Yeah, it's so important. And I don't think they realise, like Lanes, I don't think she realises how much she keeps me going through the game. Like, when I see that ball go through to her, I'm like, oh God, I better start running, because if I'm not in that box when she crosses it, like, all the work she's just done is for nothing. So I think they have a really important impact in the game to just keep everyone going and spurring them on. And, I want to get in the box so that when she crosses it, she's like, sweet, she's there, not like, oh, she's not there, is another wasted effort, or.
So, Annie, what do you think would be going through Jake Wakeling's sort of mind at the moment? Because he's been involved in so much. We'll go back to sort of digging into the goals in a little bit more detail. But take Saturday, Jake was involved in, at least 3 of the goals, really. He was unfairly chalked off an assist. Should have had 3 assists on Saturday. He's been in amongst the assist game, but he's playing in a position where people are looking, and they're always going to ask questions about his goal scoring record. What do you think would be going through his mind at the moment?
I don't know. I think maybe Lane's would be best to ask this, because she's the assist queen. I think she's top league at the moment with assists.
So loads, basically, Lanes, what we're trying to say is loads of assists, but not necessarily hitting the back of the net. To what extent can you kind of comfort yourself that you're obviously the team's winning, you're doing your job? To what extent can you keep those demons that I'm not hitting the back of the net, but I'm playing in an advanced role? To what extent can you kind of just keep that away and keep yourself motivated, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I don't know if he's kind of like the same player as me, but I love to see the team do well. I love to see Annie score. So even if you're not scoring them, you're still involved. That's what I tell myself. I'm still involved. I've still had some sort of goal contribution. The team's still doing well. The team's still winning. So hopefully he sees it that way as well, that he's still a big part of the team, even if he's not scoring like he was last season, say.
Yeah. I think that's kind of like the angle that I'm going at here. Mike, from your perspective, someone that obviously clearly watches an awful lot of Swindon Town football, as indeed we all do, what would your message be to Jake after Saturday? Obviously, he's not hit the back of the net. We know he's a lad that likes to hit the back of the net. But he's so involved, Mike, isn't he? In all the good stuff that we're doing. I guess I kind of know what you'd be saying to him, but put it in words for us.
I used to play American football, and that experience it's a very team-based sport as well. And sometimes in games of American football, you might not touch the ball at all, but it's your contribution on the pitch, off the ball, that makes a difference. And I feel like that also applies to someone like Jake Wakelin's game. Obviously, when we had our chat with him, it seems like he places a lot of pride in his energy and his running about on the pitch during the 90 minutes. And because of that, even if he doesn't get on a score sheet, obviously he said he loves scoring as well. Every goal is the same to him. I feel like he takes a lot of pride in pressing, his off the ball movement, and especially with someone like Jeffcott as well, who can make the most of that movement, by scoring or maybe even assisting him. I feel like even if he doesn't get on a score sheet, even if he doesn't necessarily get an assist in some other games as well. I feel like he can be proud as long as he's putting 110% effort in, which he has done every single game. So yeah, I just say keep it up.
Joe, bring you back into the stage. So obviously we've had to come back from going a goal down twice in the first sort of 35 minutes of this game. Were you like me? At no point when they went ahead, strangely, I just didn't seem that bothered. It felt like one of those games and looked like one of those games where there was, from the start, there was a load of goals in this. So we went 1-0 down, and it was so early. I was like, yeah, well, that obviously that kind of doesn't really matter. We'll get one back. Of course we will. We got goals in our team, and I kind of felt similar when we went. I was frustrated at 2-1 down, but I was like, but we've still got enough talent and ability in this side to get another goal back. Like I stayed consistent. I was going, we're going to win this game 4-2. I just felt really, really comfortable. And then the buggers went and got 5. But if you get my point, Joe, like did you have any kind of seeds of doubt being sown when we've gone 2-1 down, or indeed the 1-0 down?
No, not really. I don't know with this thing with Swindon. I've always felt it. Sometimes I think a goal early on, like against us, tends to G up our players across the years. I don't know what it is. I can't really remember a game where we've conceded really, really early on, like a minute, 2 minutes in, and then not. We tend to get points out of them for some reason. I'm not too sure why it is. I think the second goal, I wasn't really asked either because we replied so quickly after the first. So as you say as well, we've got goals in this team. We've got character. We've got belief, and we've got. Well, we said earlier on about the formation, but we've got different ways of playing football. We're versatile in 3 or 4 different formations. We've had a decent run over the last 4 or 5 games. I just think the confidence is there within the squad. I wasn't really asked at all, really, when we went down at either time.
Well, it's like when we went behind, even the atmosphere and the view in the crowd, it wasn't this is going to be a long day. Well, it was just, oh well, we'll just go up the other end and get one ourselves.
That's it. Yeah, it's just, I mean, the first 25 minutes of that game was literally like playing FIFA on maybe amateur mode. It was just both teams pinging balls up the pitch, goalkeepers making saves. Well, probably not so much the latter, actually. It was just goals. And I think when we had 800 odd Town fans there as well, cheering the boys on, I just think it was inevitable we were getting points.
Certainly if when we were kicking our way second half, when we went into that game level, that game was only ever going one way.
100%. At half-time 2-2, I was completely convinced we'd win. I think, we probably would have gone on to score another goal at least anyway with 11v11. I know we've scored 5 goals. I can't grumble really, but we had a chance to notch 6 or 7 and really get some goal difference behind us. But I'm just going to be picking hairs there.
Well, listen, there's been an interesting debate in the media and a very, very detailed article, and the author's name has bloody escaped me and I can't find it on my laptop. But there was a big debate about whether or not commentators are going to be necessary moving forward, or indeed whether they are necessary moving forward. And hats off, and he's listening tonight, Andrew, hats off to you, sir. I would say the thing that kind of made me just so, obviously I wasn't at the game on Saturday, so I was making the most of what coverage I could pick up on a combination of our good American friend Jiff and Andrew's commentary, whilst I was having to go about my business. But Andrew's very, very good through the tone of his voice, kind of giving us a flavour as to the levels of jeopardy that we're facing. And I think this was the thing. I just didn't pick up at any stage that, like, Andrew's seen a lot of football. I just didn't pick up at any point that, oh my God, like we're going to be on the receiving end of something here. Sol Bryn's not had the busiest of games, has he? Let's be honest. It wasn't like I was hearing his name like earlier in the season. You were hearing his name getting mentioned an awful lot, but I wasn't hearing a lot of Sol Bryn being mentioned. And I think the speed of which we've come back against both goals as well. So, like, literally, they score in the first minute, we scored in the 7th minute. They score in the 30th minute, we score in the 35th minute. And then we come out in the second half and we get a goal really quickly as well. All the football cliches come to the fore, don't they? Again, lovely work from Jake Wakeling out on the left, unselfishly squaring for Jeff Cott, who finishes with aplomb. And I think at that stage, once Jeff got hit the back of the net, I thought, you know what? I know we're going to go and get another one. It just felt there was this strange sense of inevitability. I mean, Max, what was your thoughts at kind of when the third one goes in? Were you of a similar mindset, or were you thinking we were riding our luck? Where were you at?
I was actually quite confident as well, because going on what Joe said about how we don't really tend to come out of the blocks that well. The only game I can think we really came out of the blocks early was Hartlepool. Other than that, I think we really tend to grow into games, and especially a team like Mansfield, who aren't going to sit back there at home, they're going to want to go for the win as well. I think when teams open up, and especially a team that plays free at the back, because I think when you've got Wakeling out wide and he's dragging two men out of position, it makes it easy. It makes it so easy for Jeff Cott to find the space. So I'm actually quite confident when we play against teams that play free at the back or five at the back. And again, just look at like the players in the lineup, especially that sort of front six. Like all of them have been in really, really good form lately. Like, I mean, Gladwin's been solid all season. Obviously, Darcy getting his goal, but that front, I think when we've got that front three and they're all firing, I think we can beat anyone on our day.
I think in that game as well, every time we went forward, we just looked like we were going to score. And actually, with that article, Hannah's, I think, I mean, Andrew might correct me if I'm wrong, it was Jonathan Liu in The Guardian who wrote it.
That sounds about right.
But the way we were playing, I mean, even when Louis Reid came on, some of those passes he did, it looked like the Louis Reid of last season.
Well, listen, don't get carried away with yourself, because we've got a red card to discuss before we start literally raising both hands aloft, saluting the Messiah that is Louis Reid back in the fold, which was an absolute delight. And it wasn't just a token appearance, but we'll come on to that, because your boy Boateng that got himself sent off, 59 minutes gone, and it was the most bizarre sendings off. It was one of those. It was almost the sort of thing that we would associate earlier in the season with Mr. McCurdy, wasn't it? Like that sort of, oh my God. You even heard it in the home comms. It was like literally that, like the guy was having a proper face palm moment. Like, what have you done there? Oh, now we're down at 10. Now we really are in trouble. And so it proved.
It was pure petulance. When you're on a booking, you don't give the referee a chance to make a decision like that.
Can I just say, I don't think it was a red.
Oh, did you hear every silence, Joe? It was like
that silence.
It went very quiet. But the reason I don't think it was a red was because the ball was clearly moving when Carnes tried to take the free kick quickly. Obviously, I'm taking it because we've gone on to win the game 5-2.
Yeah,
but...
Joe.
Sorry, mate.
I was thinking something similar. Because how often do League Two refs actually let you take the free kick that quickly? I mean, I swear half the time they just blow the whistle down.
He's not blown a whistle, and also the ball was moving. But having said that, Mr. Hammerhand, I will bloody well take it.
Yeah.
I personally think he should have a 5-match ban. Disgraceful.
Could have been killed. As Alex Ferguson would say.
I wouldn't have it.
But your boy Boateng was right at the heart of a lot of Mansfield Town roughhousing and shithousing all the way through that game, wasn't he? Let's be honest. He was kind of pretty much like the central figure. So it felt to me around the time he got a red, he was a red card waiting to happen. It was going to happen at some point. It was just, and again, through Andrew's comms, you kind of got this flavour that there were disciplinary issues that were kind of building up across that Mansfield. So you could see that they were, to quote a famous philosopher, losing their shit. They seem to be losing it right across the park. So it was no real surprise. Obviously, Boateng goes off, and we've got all this glorious space. And let's talk about it. I mean, who wants to talk about it? We all dream of a team of Louis Reeds, and we were dreaming on Saturday, weren't we, when he came back on? And like I said, it wasn't just the token arrival, was it? So who wants to talk us through his contribution?
We weren't just dreaming it; we were singing it.
Yeah. Hey. So our boys back in the fold. What a delicious pass! Talk me through that pass, Chris.
Well, I'm presuming you're saying the same one. It was the one through to Hutton on Darcy's goal, was it? Yes, it was.
Yes.
It was on that, and then the bowler came in, and Wakeling himself could have scored that, but then it just fell for him. But just the way it was it was pure Louis Reed vintage last season, that ball. And it wasn't the only one he played in that second half.
It was vision, wasn't it? It was pure vision from him.
It reminds me, actually, going back to that, I think it was at Harrogate, he played a pass like that through to Egbo for one of Louis Barry's goals in the first half there. It was so similar to that, where it was just inch perfect. You know, Helton didn't need to break stride, was straight there, put the ball in, bang.
It's probably the best game for Louis to come back into, really, wasn't it? Because he's come on against 10 men. He can literally sit there and play the quarterback role, where he can ping those balls through to players, well, inevitably on the attack, because we're basically just dogging them, aren't we? So he can, he can sit there and play quarterback, and he did look fantastic. And I think he's probably put a hat at least in the ring to start on Saturday.
Well, listen, obviously it's not going to be that long until, Johnny, hopefully, boards of play. Hopefully, if you're Welsh, not so if you're a Swindon fan, but it's not going to be that long until Johnny's boarding the plane and getting his wonderful little wizard hat and packing it up and taking himself out to the Far East. And obviously, whilst he's out there, that's going to leave a bloody large dragon-sized hole in the Swindon Town lineup. And I think it was a timely reminder from Louis on Saturday that, the central defensive position is one that he occupies with aplomb. And I think it gives you, earlier in the season, we talked about this, I think when I made my last little cameo, we talked about we were at the Woking game, Joe, you'll remember the conversations we were having in the bar after the game with a couple of people from the club who said to us that we signed this guy, Saidu Khan. He's, if it doesn't work out with Jack Payne, he's going to be a like-for-like replacement. He's your man. And I think if we're playing a diamond, it sort of starts to open opportunities with Khan going further back up the pitch, doesn't it? As well as he's playing in central defensive midfield. You can't. I've said before, I think it's a tragedy for all concerned when you've got a player of Louis Reed's ability and he sat on the bench. I don't care, what any of the circumstances or any of the rumours and conjecture is. The fact is, he's got to be within the top 3 or 5 players in this division, and it is a tragedy that he's not starting football matches for Swindon at the moment. So, with Johnny disappearing, surely he's got to be coming back in, Joe, isn't he?
Yeah, 100%, mate. I think, going back to, we mentioned Khan there, the reason why that Louis Reed isn't playing football, ultimately, you're taking it at face value here based on performances on the pitch. Swindon have been winning games of football with Saidu Khan playing man of the match performances out on the field. This is an opportunity through the World Cup for Louis to come back in, and Saidu keeps playing well, Louis starts playing well. It's then a case of when Johnny comes back, it's keeping Johnny out the side, which is probably again arguably the best player in League Two, the best footballer in League Two, out of the team. It's just, I think it's credit to what Saidu's brought to table. I think we mentioned there, speaking of Woking, we were told that we were signing Saidu Khan, and me and you were we were frantically Googling who's Saidu Khan. We're looking at his stats. He's played at Maidstone and played at Chesterfield in the National League, and we're thinking, we're being told he's our marquee signing. And I think there was a bit of not disappointment on our part, but maybe what's the word I'm looking for? We weren't in the know really of who he was. We were like, if he's a marquee signing, he's not essentially a big name, but my God, he has been a marquee signing, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, he's been absolutely phenomenal. I remember on the day turning to you and going, "Who?"
Yeah, literally, yeah.
What the bloody? I've never even heard of Saidu Khan. It literally sounds like it's one of those where fans of teams in League 1 and 2, we're always guilty of going, let's go into the non-leagues and pull a few gems out of non-league. But then when you get clubs kind of go and do it, particularly off the back of losing such an influential player as we did in Jack Payne, it's kind of a bit like, do we really replace our best players with some of these gems from non-league? It's almost a bit like, yeah, okay. I think we pay a lot of lip service to unearthing gems from non-league. However, as has been, I mean, there are a lot of jibes made about our recruitment earlier in the season when a lot of these players were bedding in, and when the likes of Romeo Hutton were having difficult times, and people weren't convinced with Angus MacDonald, and Solbrim was getting dug out by people in the town end, causing Mildy to go and intervene, and I could keep going and going and going, can't I? And I think the fact is, these boys have got their kind of roots in now. You know, they've got themselves settled. They kind of know their roles in the team, and these guys are really starting to blossom. And yeah, I mean, listen, Saidu Khan is almost week on week starting to look more and more like a player that we start to look at and we go, I can see him moving on for some serious coin. You know, he is imposing himself on football matches.
It's been Gladwin, MK2, isn't it? Because that's Gladwin came out of was it Marlow? We got Gladwin from.
It was, yeah.
And you know, it's such a similar thing to that.
Certainly was. Hey, well, listen, it's been a few weeks, but we've got Charlie back on the show. How are we, Charlie Austin? Good evening. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are we?
Yeah, we're rock and roll. How about you, mate? How's Brisbane's favourite son?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Ticking along, pal. It's good to have you back.
Well,
mate.
so listen. Oh, bless you, Charlie. That's very kind of you to say so. Thank you very much. Means a lot coming from you, pal. Much appreciated. So listen, it's been, I mean, since we've last spoken, you've played now an awful lot of competitive football. How's things down under for you?
It's not too bad. We've drawn 3, lost 1. We've been a bit unlucky, but we played the best team in the league and got it handed to us. So yeah, it's nice to be back playing competitive games, of course, but yeah, I'd like to score a couple more goals, but I'm off the mark, so that's all that matters. And
yeah, so Charlie, you were off your mark against Western Sydney, weren't you?
Yeah, just a Joe Knowles cut back, and I was just free on just inside the box and half shanked it in off the post, but the bad ones go in, mate.
Classic. Sounds like a little bit of classic Charlie Austin.
Correct.
Yeah, listen.
Go on, mate.
Let's bring you back into the Swindon Town world, Charlie. I posed a question for a couple of guys earlier, and we've got Annie Colston and Helene Butcher from Swindon Women's Football Club, and Annie is almost like the women's version of Charlie Austin. You'll be pleased to know she just can't stop scoring at the moment for us. And I posed the question to Annie. I posed it to you as well. Jake Wakelin, who you remember was on the show with you, getting on for about 6-8 weeks ago now, I think. Who used to clean your baggy. He's contributing an awful lot of assists at the moment, but you can see his frustration that it's not quite dropping for him in front of goal. Did you ever remember a spell like that in your career, Charlie? What kind of stuff goes through your mind? And indeed, how does that affect your training and your approach to games?
Ultimately, you're a team player, but I'll be brutally honest with you, Mark. Centre forwards are the most selfish people on the pitch. So as much as he's assisting, he'll be wanting to score himself as long as the team's doing well. I guess it's just going back to basics as such, but just not trying too hard, if anything, because
he's contributing assists by the bucket load, I might add. So does that affect your psyche, or is it still you're waiting for the ripple of the net?
No, I think it don't affect your psyche, but ultimately, assists are not goals. Goals are the main thing. But that's what I mean. Strikers are the most selfish people on the pitch. So it's listen, everyone wants to score goals, of course. However, it's different with Jay. If he's assisting, listen, look at Town. They've been winning games of football. So it's different if you make 1 assist and you get beat 2-1. You know, it's like, oh, it's all right. I got an assist, but listen, he'll be wanting to score. Of course he will. But if he's helping the team move forward in the right direction, then listen, you can't ask for much else. Listen, the goals are not there, no, but he's chipping in with the assists, so it helps.
And are you surprised, Charlie? It's the thing. The way Swindon fans are talking, you would think we've had this rapid turnaround in fortune, but we've not lost that many games this season. Are you kind of not surprised, but were you expecting the click to happen at some point, knowing the quality that we got in the squad, or did you?
It's a domino effect, Mark. As soon as you get a few games to get together, you take off. It was always going to be a matter of time. But with football, listen, it's about patience. Again, Swindon had an overhaul in the summer, a few players leaving, important players, the manager and all that going. And Scott Lindsey's come in and done a fantastic job. He needed time to settle in. His transition from coach to manager is obviously different. He knew the lads, of course, but he still needed to get his style of play and his authority across as being as the head coach and manager as such. So, listen, he needed a bit of time. And you can see it all coming together now. So, listen, it's an exciting time for Swindon going through this period. And long may it continue. Had a great result at Mansfield. And then, do you know what? You know, the good teams pick up points on the road, and they score late goals that win games. They score late goals that nick a point away from home. And look, they went to Bradford and nicked a point away there. And listen, it could work out to be an important point come the end of the season. I know we're a long way away, but you look back at results over the season, because you'll look back and go, oh, we could have went to Bradford, lost 1-0 there. We should have picked up something there. Well, they've got a point on the road, so it's an important one.
Yeah, I get the impression, Charlie, that, you know, the lads, you know, the belief really started to mushroom after Bradford. I mean, that's a tough place to go and get a point, isn't it? They've got a lot of fans in the ground. You know, Mark Hughes, you know, who I'm sure you'll have an opinion of, but Mark Hughes casts a big shadow at our level of football as well.
Yeah.
You know, an intimidating factor in its own right when you're seeing him in the opposition's dugout. So to go there and get a point right at the death as well, and then cue the crazy celebrations, that must really set you. I mean, that must have set us up perfectly for Mansfield, as the results seem to suggest, right?
Yeah, of course. When you go to a place like Bradford with more fans than the average League Two club, I guess, then it inspires the players a bit more, because you want to play in front of big crowds or bigger crowds every week. So listen, it was important that they went and played. They put a performance on, got a point, and moved on. And then you need to take that in and not take it for granted. They've gone to Mansfield, which is another tough away trip, and demolished them, really. I know it was back and forth at the start, but then they really put the foot to the pedal and accelerated away. And listen, I'm not sure, not many teams will score 5 on the road this season. So look, it was important. You keep Johnny Williams, keep performing. He's doing really well. Glads is obviously doing what he does. I think the thing is for them too is it's not a surprise to anybody how well they're performing. So theirs not gets taken for granted, but you expect that week in, week out from them. And if they don't perform well, then the questions get, what's up with them? What's up with them? But ultimately, they're just having an off day. But you look at the way Roland Darcy's going at the moment, they need players to latch on and perform well. If them two are performing well, then it's easy for the rest of the team to up their game also and get after it. And you see that the other day when they scored 5, I think it was a big team effort, and it just showed the direction the club's trying to go in.
Oh, mate, well, it's joyous to hear you say that. Well, look, we've got the rest of my panel here with you, Charlie. Guys, any of you got any questions for Charlie? Anything you want to frame? Because Charlie, one person I do want to introduce you to in person is Annie. Annie, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Hello, Annie. Charlie, Annie.
Hello.
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 So, Charlie, yes, as I said, Annie is basically like Swindon Women's Football Club equivalent of you, mate, when you used to wear the red 32.
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to get you two talking was, Charlie, you'll be aware that there was a double header at the county ground. It's quite a historic moment for the club last week, where essentially they've come off the back of the men playing their 90 minutes from 3 o'clock through till 5 o'clock, and then the women came on an hour later and played a double header, and you ended up with the best part of 800 people in the stadium. And for Annie, that's a big step. And I can imagine that must have been a bit like when you were at Poole and you made the switch to Swindon and suddenly playing in front of so many people. Is that you must have some nuggets of wisdom there to share, Charlie, when it comes to moving from, one man and his dogs playing in front of, serious numbers in a serious stadium. Like what would you be saying to Annie, or indeed Annie, is there anything you would like anything you want to pick Charlie's brain on?
Any wisdom is welcome, please.
Listen, when it happens again, and you get the people in there, and you'll know, like the first time you go there and you're looking around, you think, listen, this is brilliant. There's more people watching. I need to perform. But ultimately, when you go across the white line and play, you're concentrating that much that you kind of forget what's there. You know they're obviously in the background, but you forget what's there. So when it happens again, you'll just be like, oh, this is okay. This is okay. And you just got to just continue doing what you do best. You wouldn't be there. You wouldn't be performing or playing in front of these people if you or the Swindon ladies team wasn't performing to a standard, So it's all about just enjoying it and taking on them opportunities, because when you play in front of the people, listen, you put on a hell of a performance. I think you won 10-0, didn't you, RC?
Yeah, we did.
That's going to want people to come back and watch again. So you just got to enjoy playing in front of the fans. Listen, it was different for me. It will be different for you, of course, going for it. But listen, you enjoy it, and you enjoy playing in front of a fan. So you've just got to take it as a positive. No negative sides. Don't be nervous or scared or anything like that. You're playing in front of. Just go out there, enjoy it, and do the hardest thing in football is put the ball in the back of the net, and everyone will love you.
I'm trying.
Try. Well, you're undercooking it a bit there, Annie. Not be funny. You banged 4 past Bolton on the day we scored 10, and you can't stop scoring this season. So we're not have the I'm trying bit out of you. I won't have it. Won't have it. So, boys on my panel and ladies on my panel, is any questions from you guys for Charlie? Any nuggets of wisdom you guys are all searching for?
Actually, one thing I wanted to ask. Oh, you go on, Mike.
I saw this clip on Twitter the other day. It looked like it was like an all or nothing documentary, and you were just digging out one of your teammates. What was going on there?
Oh no, I want to win. They're just doing like a documentary through a different team or player every week. And listen, they just filmed us, and we unfortunately played the best team in the league at the time, and we got to us the first half, and then the centre half made 2 mistakes. Really, that was preventable. And listen, what was said in the heat of the moment. We shook hands when obviously in the half-time break, ready to go out the second half. And I think, listen, it happens in every dressing room, mate, that people just sitting like, oh my God, has he gone at it again? It's like, no, this is what happens in many dressing rooms, many weekends, many midweeks. It don't matter. Ultimately, it's just a desire to win. You professional footballers, professional people that want to win, you want the best. And listen, sometimes emotions get the better of you, but you got to wear your heart on your sleeve. Well, some people don't, some people do, and I certainly wear my heart on my sleeve. And it was just one of them moments that it just happened. Typical striker, defender. I was telling him to defend, and he was telling me to score. So it was one of them. Listen, it was good fun filming it. Of course, it gives more coverage to the A League, I guess, as such. But no, it was just heat of the moment thing. That's all. Bit of nothing.
Yeah. Was that the Melbourne City game, Charlie?
Yeah, they battered us, mate.
Yeah. What? Sorry, Mac. I think you had a question for Charlie. Well, did you?
Yeah, it was just regarding now you've actually got into the meat of the league. Have you found the standard, and has it surprised you, or is it about what you expected?
No, I think it surprised me because I didn't really know what to expect. But like I said, I don't think they get enough credit over here for what they have on offer, and because it's like the 4th sport in the country, it don't get as much coverage. So I guess when you come over, you don't really know what to expect. But I give it to them. There's some good young lads and some good talent from in Australia and a good foreign boys that they've got in. But listen, it's on the up, and I've said, and I mean this, for a country that has the size of this and has it the 4th sport. Listen, they've got the men have qualified for the World Cup, and it's got the women are hosting the World Cup here next year. Now, in the next 9 months, if they want to grow the game, then they've got no better opportunity to do. If they don't, then Australian football will just be parked on the side, really, mate, if I'm honest, because you can't have that unique opportunity where your men's are in the World Cup and then the women are hosting it and then not grasp it. And especially the way, I think the difference here a little bit a lot difference here to the UK. They're mad for the amount of money that goes into like the grassroots football and the kids clubs is crazy. But when they get to like 15, it's when like the rugby league and the AFL people come and take them, unfortunately, and then they go off and do that instead.
And I'm guessing that's a big pull for them, because that's where the big contracts are at.
Yeah,
right?
And that's where the big money is, and you can't blame them for it, because it takes a lot of time. And here it's just, until you get into, unless you're an exceptional talent, you can't really get into it. Whereas into like the football teams until I don't know, 18, 19 as such, where the AFL, they'll have you in at 16, 17. So, and when the money they're paying compared to what it is, and it's like the AFL and the NRL over here is like football back home, the Premier League. You can't pick up a paper without reading about it. You can't turn the radio on without hearing about it, you know. So that's what I'm saying with the football here. They got 9 months. And if they want to grasp this opportunity and grow the game, then great. But if they don't, then this is just going to be stuck on the same merry-go-round.
Mate, listen, you keep banging that drum, Charlie. I'm sure. Well, it's obvious that they're listening to you. I mean, what other sort of pros can you think of, Charlie? Got that kind of level of overseas profile that you've brought into the A-League. That they're the games.
I don't know. This is my worry about this access all area thing. Like they was all going raving about it. Oh, it's made into the British media and it done this and it done that. And I didn't want to say to him, but I was like, yeah, that was just because that clip went viral, went back home, and then everyone see it. Like, I'm honest. You tell me your numbers in about 4 weeks' time, and then compare them to it. So I don't know. Listen, they just get stuck in. They're happy with the product they got and then they want to say they want to grow the game without actually doing anything about it, which I think's a bit strange, especially with how big the country is and all this and the opportunity they've got and the places you can play in Australia, you know, and the clubs they've got. But listen, time will tell what it. But listen, we played in 32-degree heat on Saturday, mate, and that was the most strangest thing I've ever played and the hardest thing I've played in a long time. So over that, I made a wet, windy day at home over a 32-degree heat playing football. Let me tell you, it's a lot different lying on a sun lounger asking for a pint than what it is putting your shinnies in.
Yeah, mate, I can absolutely imagine. I know, obviously, it wasn't that long ago. We were having games where I think the temperatures were tipping 35 to 40 degrees over here as well. And, you know, you had to have those mandatory water breaks. You could tell by the expression on people's faces. Yeah, that was no joke, mate. Top level football in that.
Yeah.
Sort of, I'm pleased I'm retired, Charlie. Well, look, what's the day got in store for you, mate? You're obviously just off.
No, not today. They do 3 days on, then a day off, 1 day leading into the game. So we play on Sunday. So I'm in today, and then I'm off tomorrow. But I've got the in-laws over, which is nice. They're over for the next 2 weeks, so I haven't seen them for a few months since I've been over. So that's nice. And then that's about it, really. I won't be doing nothing else. Because we're 10 hours, so I can just catch up with the football. I've got to do talk sport in an hour. What's the time now? 20 past 10.
Yeah, that's about that.
So half 11. Training, be home. Not a lot, mate. Day off tomorrow, and then I'll probably just go to the beach or something tomorrow if it stays nice. And that pretty much is about it, Mark.
Well, you take it easy, pal. I mean, as always, absolute treat to hear from you. We're sending all our love down to you and your family, buddy, and we look forward to catching up with you again next week.
Yes, top man, mate. You take care. All the best. Good luck for the weekend, all right, mate?
Cheers, pal. Take care, Charlie.
Bye, mate. Bye.
Ta-ra, pal. Oh, well, I've said it many times. The words box office. Annie, I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.
Oh, no, you're very welcome. I think Vic Morgan sums it up perfectly, Annie, when he talks about Charlie Austin, when he says that he's possibly or probably the most natural finisher you ever saw in a Swindon Town shirt. And Vic's full of superlatives. And when I consider Vic's probably seen twice the amount of Swindon Town football that I've seen. Yeah, I think you did absolutely the right thing. Try and get as much wisdom out of him as you possibly can. How about you, Lanes? Did it float your boat listening to Charlie speak? He's box office, isn't he?
He is. He was good, to be fair.
Yeah, he's great fun. Not a lot that he. I still believe that there's unfinished business in a Swindon Town shirt, but that's maybe a conversation for another time. But listen, obviously Charlie jumped on. We hadn't quite finished, ladies and gentlemen, have we? Talking about Mansfield. So I think we just got up to the point where we were about to start singing Ronan Darcy Baby. I don't know who wants to lead in on that.
What a rocket of a shot!
Yeah,
absolutely. Like, just I saw a clip on Twitter earlier of a video sort of from the side stand, and it was absolute rocket.
And a proper beauty, wasn't it? It's one of those goals, Ellis. I don't know how you felt, or if anyone else, but sort of would agree with me here. But when you see it from the kind of the standard angle that was afforded to us as you're watching the game, it's one of those ones where you're thinking, I bet in the ground that didn't look as far out as he actually was. But yeah, I know exactly the clip you're talking about, Ellis.
Yeah.
And that clip absolutely showed you how far away he was. But he's been shaping up for this, Ellis, hasn't he?
Yeah, that goal was coming. You in previous games, he was sort of letting shots go at the edge of the box, and it wasn't going to be long before one was going to find the back of the net. And yeah, what a goal that was.
Yeah,
it took some skills not to be 2 seats further down the stand where I should have been.
And even the build up to the goal, like he done well to keep hold of the ball and sort of put it off to the side so he could get the shot off.
Well, Chris, you had interesting stains on your shirt before the game. I had kind of comparable stains on my pants after the Darcy goal. It for me was one of the most delightful goals I've seen a Swindon Town player score for a very, very, very long time, and soil myself I did, and how good it was. I mean, yeah, like the lovely thing about Ronan as well is that you talk about sort of players gelling and sort of or developing and settling in and really finding their roots. I mean, I don't know, if anyone's of a similar opinion to me, but Ronan has grown in stature significantly over the last few weeks, and he's rapidly becoming. There was that moment where Ricky Aguiar kind of got himself back into the lineup, and then has found himself kind of out the lineup fairly quickly. I'm talking about Bradford, obviously, as Ronan came on, and I think Ronan really stamped his authority on the pitch. I noticed when he came on against Bradford, he was immediately like geeing up the fans, geeing up his teammates, like, come on, like properly firing them up. And then obviously he gave a performance of real maturity when he came on, and he's up again on Saturday. I mean, again, if he plays the way he did against Mansfield, he's undroppable, isn't he?
He's another one of those players as well that works his socks off. He's a bit like Wakeland. If like the amount of ground he must cover in a game, if he loses the ball, he's back. He's trying to win that ball. He's constantly running. Top player, and I think we're going to see a lot more from him this season as well.
I'm going to just ask everyone that's listening in, like, to, open up your little emoji box, because I just want to kind of get a bit of an indication. I am desperate to get Ronan Darcy on this show as one of our next interviews, if not our next interview. And could everyone please, like, just hit whatever emoji you can possibly hit if you're of the opinion that I am, that Ronan Darcy is an absolute must interview, because I think he's going to be a fascinating personality to speak to. So that's a yes. Look at that.
Can we get a little song, Hannah's?
Yeah, what a Ronan Darcy, baby. With extra gusto.
The thing with that goal on Saturday, though, it reminded me of at Walsall with the when Jack Payne scored. The second it left his foot, you knew it was going in. And when Darcy hit that, I think we were up before it was even anywhere near the goal, because he's not stopping that.
Yeah,
you could have had 2 goal kicks in there, and it would have gone in still.
Oh, I love a good cliche. Whenever people say things like that, I always think back to that wonderful historic shot of Peter Shilton and Ray Clements. That's proper old school goalkeeping training, that. Utterly pointless, by the way. But yeah, back in the day, they'd throw 2 of us in the goal and like literally go, right, there you go. And you both got to like, try and beat the other one to the ball. It's like, what's the point? When are you remotely like that? But nonetheless, I get your point. But then we weren't finished there, were we? So what did we have? Best part of another just under 20 minutes further down the line, and lovely movement from Jeffcott. Basically, a bit of a silly penalty for Mansfield to give away, wasn't it, Chris? I mean, what did you make of it? Was it one of those where you were just sort of almost laughing at the keeper as Jeffcott?
Well, the keeper doesn't need to make that challenge there. He's going away from goal. It's a silly challenge to make, but then again, at the end of the day, it didn't really make much difference to the result, but it was a clear penalty.
Yeah,
and because Jeffcott was just there before he got there, and there's a few keepers that do that as well. I remember, was it Bradford last year? Once the keeper went in like last minute against Iandolo. Silly challenge. That just it's an easy decision for the referee.
Hang on.
Need to be making that challenge.
Can we just intervene at this stage? I'm sorry, I don't mean to be overly silly tonight, gentlemen, but Chris has just referred to Ellis as Iandolo. I'm not having that. What sort of shows you think you're on, Chris?
Come on now,
You
Chris.
should know
You know
better.
it's Landolo.
Come on, Chris.
Iandolo.
Look,
Try again.
you're pushing it, Chris. You're pushing my patience, pal. You're pushing my buttons as well.
Ellis.
Look, we still see people on socials spelling it Landolo.
Oh yeah, I've had a good Landola. I've heard that before. No, I'm not having it. Do you know what though? One of the things we're going to do when we get Ellis on the show is we will get, like we did with Rashawn Hepburn-Murphy, we're going to get a definitive from him. Ellis, what do you want to be called? Because I'm sure he's just a good old-fashioned Ellis Iandolo. I'm sure he is.
Fantastic name, by the way.
And while we're on the subject of Ellis, how good was it to see him back in the side? And I'll ask Ellis to tell me about Ellis.
Oh, yeah. I like seeing him further up the pitch. Scott Lindsey said when he was on the show, he sees him as more of a attacking player, and I agree. I think Chris touched on it at the start of this show of how he's sometimes caught out when he's playing at left back, in terms of positioning, but he's going to take a few games to get back into sort of his old ways, but yeah, he's a class player.
Yeah, he's I'm with you. I'm with you, Ellis. I think he's another one that I think is clearly going to benefit from Johnny disappearing out to the World Cup. I think it gives him, it gives him opportunities, doesn't it, to slot in where you see Johnny at the moment. And again, I mean, how many times have we said it? You know, about Ellis as being a victim of his own versatility. But also, I'm hoping, I would like to see, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I'd like to see Reece Devine being given opportunities at left back as opposed to Ellis. But at the same time, I'm sure Ellis, he's such an important player in our first team. It must be quite a difficult dilemma. Do you bring Reece in and then just sit Ellis on the bench when Ellis is such a quality act for us? Or do you just play Ellis? I mean, like, that is a tough decision for Scott to have to make, isn't it? I don't know. Mike, we haven't heard from you for a bit, Mike. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I feel like the issue keeping Ellis out of a regular run of games in the team is our midfield, and as we rightly mentioned, our depth. Like, I agree with Ellis. I like seeing him more sort of in an attacker position up the pitch. I feel like one of his best attributes is pinging sort of long balls as well. I remember last season when we were actually playing him in the field, he was doing absolutely unreal. So I'd love to see him back there and giving Reece Devine a run of games as well. He's someone who hasn't really seen the pitch in a long time, so I'd love to see what he's got. But it's a nice problem to have at the end of the day. I'd rather have a lot of good players who are providing competition for loads of different positions rather than wishing that we had a player who was performing at a higher level. So it's a challenge for Scott Lindsey, but it's a nice challenge to have.
Well, listen, Sound Trauma's pitched in a couple of interesting points. Don't forget Morgan Roberts, says Sound Trauma. Would love to see him get more minutes. I think, and Morgan Roberts is definitely worth us spending a few minutes on, isn't he? Delicious header that nearly tore the crossbar off. I don't know who wants to give us a synopsis of that, but lovely move and such power. Bearing in mind the cross is sort of like swung in from the right hand side. He's got so much power behind that.
It was. Sorry, go on, Chris.
I was going to say, how many of all these things we talk about, they're from a hot and cross. Everything seems to come from a hot and cross, but it was a fantastic header. And I was thinking, was when Williams was away, is that a position that might be really suited to Roberts?
Well, listen, I was said, and I was kind of, people were raising their eyebrows when I raised this during my last little cameo that, I mean, for me, I think, if I really want to see Roberts get a load of minutes, in the build up to Johnny getting on the plane, touch wood, because I think Morgan's got one of the most, and I know you have to be a little bit careful when you talk about highlights reels, particularly when they've come from the non-league, and appreciate Conference North is competitive, but it is still obviously two levels below where we're at. However, I've seen enough from Morgan Roberts to suggest that he's going to be very, very, very useful, at least regularly coming off the bench moving forward. He's got a bag of tricks. He clearly, he showed at the weekend. He's got a header in the locker. He's good on the deck. Puts a good ball in. So yeah, I'm of a similar opinion. So thank you for raising that sound trauma. I think it's a point very, very well made. Sound Trauma's also saying the Bradford game local BBC commentary was hilarious. First half, they were singing Bradford's praises. What a change of mood for the second. Only fell short of calling for Sparky's head. Well, we were just talking about Mark Hughes, like casting a large shadow. He was particularly salty, was he not, ladies and gentlemen of the panel, after the game? His face was an absolute picture. It's a joy to behold a proper old school 80s, 90s footballer grumpy face, particularly ex-Man United grumpy, like sore loser face. And some pretty salty comments after the game as well. He was absolutely of the opinion that we had robbed them for a point when we've gone and nabbed our penalty from Jakey Wakeling's cross on the Tuesday night. So who enjoyed that? Tell me about it.
It was great though. But the thing is though, Wakeling could have had 2 or 3 that day. It just so happened to be that was the goal we got. And also going back to the commentators as well. The commentators were saying nobody does the lad at the back there, Platt there, and Wakeling must have done him 4 or 5 times in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think it's perfect as well. If you're going to, Mark, you said it there as well. Hughley was absolutely pissing. It was brilliant. But there's the best way to make a manager salty or to properly piss someone off by nicking a point at the end of the game is with a contentious penalty that the keeper saves and it rebounds in.
I completely agree.
Poetry in motion.
It was awful. It was an awful experience to go through. And if I had Mr. Jeff Cott sat with me right now, the looks that I'd give him, he wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of them. But nonetheless, it all happened in a beautiful manner. It was up the piss boiling Reds.
That's it. I think Gav Gunning as well boiled some extra piss, he said in the show last week, by just taking a load of shit from a Bradford fan behind the dugout all game, and then turning around for the penalty, just staring at him as it's saved, watching the Bradford fan half get out of his seat and then sit back down very quickly. I just think
there's this video I saw from Luke actually as well. Luke on Twitter, and he was recording the penalty, and then obviously it saves it, and then he points the camera towards the ground, and obviously he scores, and he just goes nuts.
Oh, that's just the best way to do it, isn't it?
It was a thing of beauty. But look, getting back to Mansfield, we'll part Brad. Bradford was beautiful, and thank you for that sound trauma. It was brilliant to hear. Away comms on Saturday as well was absolutely delightful. But they made some interesting comments, didn't they, about by fair means or foul. I don't know whether or not they're risking bringing their... from what I understand, it was Bradford's own in-house commentary team that were making comments about essentially injuring Johnny Williams or taking him out of the game. And I think that's if you're an official commentary team from within the club, you're on thin ice there, aren't you? Chris,
Mansfield did it as well.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Mansfield.
Bradford did it too as well, Mark. Both clubs did it. Both commentary teams.
Yeah, the Bradford commentator said, I hope Johnny Williams gets a dead leg or something like that.
Yeah, look, Chris, as someone that works in sports media presently, you'll be aware of rules and regulations, the things you can and can't say. But let's just suffice to say that's thin ice. That's thin ice territory, isn't it?
Oh, it is. We wouldn't get Horsey saying that, would we?
Well, no, we wouldn't.
No, there's some things you think and don't say.
Yeah, far too professional, Andrew, these days, aren't we? But we'll move on. So listen, fundamentally, Mansfield 2, Swindon Town 5 from Saturday. It was just absolutely wonderful. I'm guessing the thing that I really enjoyed as well was the reports that were coming out of Nottinghamshire after the game as to actually, whilst there was some piss being boiled in the ground, the general vibe in and around the pubs. Chris, you were obviously up there and you commented on this as well. They were very, very good hosts, from what I gather.
Yeah, they were actually. Most of the games have been done. Stockport was brilliant as well. We went in the pub after the game. So, the lad I was with, obviously Max knows Adam, and he says, "Do you fancy a pint before we go home?" We met a group of Stockport fans in there. 5 pints later, we went home because it was such a good chat about the game and about football. You know, it's so good when you can get on with no trouble like that.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, again, I don't know whether Lanes, this is one for you, or Annie, whether you'd like to contribute to this, but one of the things that sort of really came out the summer, the impact of the women's game, and obviously the Lionesses winning the tournament in the manner that they did, was lots of people. I mean, I had relatives. I had a niece, her stepdad, and my sister-in-law took my very, very young niece to her first game of football, see the Lionesses. She was utterly inspired, and they were amazed. He goes to an awful lot of Chelsea games, and he's been a Chelsea fan. You know, he has transcended eras, and Chelsea obviously haven't always had the best reputation when we go back into the 70s and, you know, when hooliganism was rife in the UK 70s and 80s. But they were obviously all very inspired by the fact there was this kind of like new feel in our football stadia. It's very welcoming. It's very family orientated. That a lot of that kind of aggro you associate with football, they just said it just wasn't there. It was, you know, so, I mean, again, you must have an opinion on that, Lanes and Annie, as to whether or not, you know, that's something realistically we could aim for in the men's game. Do you ever feel as to why maybe that exists with the women's game but doesn't at the moment with the men's game? Or have you
I
gone
was just waiting for Lanes to speak.
I was waiting for you to answer.
You go, Lanes. Go
Sorry,
on.
it's my fault. I should point to one of you in particular, but
Yeah,
I'm just
point
trying
to
to be
Lanes.
the congenial host. Be honest, Lanes. Like, is it? Do you? What's your gut? What's your gut say about why is it feisty? You know, in you know, people watching the men's game versus the women's game, because there's no shortage of passion in the women's game. You know, you saw Jill Scott in the final, kind of literally roaring towards the end of the game. You know, you'll know the moment I'm talking about. So it's not like there's any shortage of aggression or passion on the pitch. But in the stands, it was a very, very different vibe, certainly, and the women's game got a lot of plaudits for that. And like I said, Chris at the weekend was saying that, you know, when things are good, as they were in Mansfield, it was an absolute treasure for him to be able to travel up there and enjoy that.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, but people say that about like when we play as well, though. Like, kind of like when we play, like it is obviously like competitive, but there's not as many fights, and like we don't dive as much, and like we like not as much during the game as well, like the men do. So maybe that's kind of it, that we're not as much on the pitch as the men are. So maybe the fans aren't.
Interesting. So almost like the level of sportspersonship is to a point where you maybe think that might overspread. And obviously, we can be honest about it. The size of crowds that, you know, that you guys are playing in front of from a women's football club point of view at the moment aren't the same size as the men's. So you're inevitably, the more crap you throw at a wall, the more it's going to stick, if we're talking about the slightly more malignant element of supporters. But at the same time, we had lots of full stadia, didn't we, in the summer? And it seemed to be more of a kind of festival of football fans. So it's a tough one to kind of put your finger on, isn't it? But I guess what I'm trying to say is, at some point, wouldn't it be lovely, Chris, to go back to you, to have more experiences akin to, you know, the kind of experiences that Lanes and Annie have, and people that go to watch women's football have, and what you experienced at Mansfield? There was no shortage of passion on the pitch at Mansfield Saturday. It just seems like they know they did it right on and off the pitch.
No, there wasn't as well, but I think the level of football we're watching against the level in the Premier League is a different mindset, isn't it? You know, it's obviously the money and whatnot that goes a long way, but it's just so nice to just go there and you're not having to worry about that side of things escalating.
It's interesting, Keelan. Thank you. So, Keelan, who's the assistant boss of the women's football team, has said that he said, guys, I'd say that's changing as the leagues are getting more competitive. So yeah, interesting. We'll keep an eye out on that. But yeah, fingers crossed. It's something that it's something that doesn't seem to be or seem to be celebrated, as opposed to seem to be in any way, shape, or form detrimental, which is maybe what people were kind of lazily suggesting, say 3-4 years ago, that it's not quite as passionate in the stadiums as it needs to be. All those old cliches seem to be disappearing, but still. Well, look, we will park that. But listen, obviously the win against Mansfield propelled us temporarily up the fourth in the table. Unfortunately, results last night conspired to go against us a little, and we dropped back down to fifth. But nonetheless, we are beautifully positioned, snugly in amongst the promotion race. As we enter a weekend away from the league, and we play Stockport at the weekend. I wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking about, we touched on it earlier about, Scott Lindsey and formations and so on and such like, guys. Is there anything you kind of want to pitch in there? Because it has been, I don't want to kind of rehash the conversation we had about half an hour ago where we touched on, we've already talked about the fact that some fans still aren't necessarily willing to sort of swallow humble pie. I don't necessarily want to touch on that, but is there anything that you guys want to add off the back of Bradford and where we are set up now ahead of the Stockport game at the weekend?
What I'd say is, tangibly, we've been quite impressive over the last, I think, is it 7 games? We won 5 out of 7. I can't see anything that Lindsay's done wrong, really. And I'm not trying to sort of go full happy clapper mode here. I just, we've named the show the Big Fans Phone In. Please, if you disagree with what we're trying to say or what I'm trying to say in particular, obviously we've got different opinions on the show, on the panel. Let us know your opinions, guys. Press the speaker button. Come on and let's just have a chat, because it fascinates me how you can't be at least content, pushing content, but happy with what we're seeing on the pitch at the minute.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. It's been one of the great frustrations of kind of hosting this show, is that you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. From my perspective, I've had sort of well over 30 years of just seeing our supporter base get browbeaten into a kind of state of almost kind of apathy. And some people just sort of set in just stuck with a mindset of negativity. And the whole thing around the Tom Broadbent Lounge was all about, well, hang on a minute, let's try and see if we can tackle some of that, because we've got a brand new era with a brand new owner, lots of kind of uncharted territory for us to be kind of like going into now, where we could see the ground completely revamped. And we're going to be in a position where if we play our cards right and we grow something nicely here, that, hopefully the club will sit up and take notice of what we're doing, and we'll get an opportunity to help them tell the story as all their many stories as this whole thing unfolds on the pitch, the stadium situation, the growth of the club, and hopefully take fans on a bit of a ride. The downside at the moment is that it's still very, I think it's quite a, for some, it's been quite a kind of culture shock for them to have a collective of supporters that actually do sort of kind of tend to see a more glass half full supporting experience of Swindon Town, and be willing to talk about that, as opposed to just focusing on the negative. And people talk, I like to think, I don't know, as someone that played a relatively decent standard of football, I kind of felt all season that the situation on the pitch is developing, right? It's organic. You can see that like these guys are developing, they are growing. I think one of the problems Scott Lindsey's got is that whilst he's not an elder statesman, he's got a few years on, say, for example, a Ben Garner. He looks like an older guy. So I think people are almost, I don't know, I kind of get the impression that people look at Scott Lindsey and go, almost like he's a little bit old school, sort of stuck in his ways. He's an older guy. He's just an assistant. He's this and he's that. And they've just been willing to write him off, as opposed to look and go, well, actually, do you know what? He's a young manager. In experienced sort of circles, he's a young manager. He's a very, very experienced coach, but he's a young manager. I think it's going to be very, very interesting moving forward. The Cole Larriman appointment, Chris, is a very, very important one, I think, for Scott Lindsey, isn't it? And a very interesting one as well, because he's now got that mentor working alongside him that he can kind of bounce off, like the old experienced ex-Arsenal coach, very experienced head in football. So yeah, it's interesting times for Scott Lindsey, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it is as well. But I think you've pretty much roughly nailed it, hit the nail on the head there as well. With thing is with Scott Lindsey, how old has he got? 50, 52, 53 people saying, "Oh, he's that old," and he's not been able to hit the nail on the head. It's like he's come in and he's never managed anywhere before, and people are have just sort of latched onto that and said, "Oh, why have we got this guy? Is this old with no experience?" But he's got plenty of experience, just at a lower level.
Yeah, exactly that. And obviously, I think it's the situation, even the down to the situations with like Jamie Day. Jamie's a very kind of amiable, sort of smiley, happy, but crucially very, very experienced coach. It just happens to be that all of his experience, a lot of his senior experience has been spent out in Bangladesh. But Jamie's come up through the ranks at Arsenal as well. I'm sure Larriman and Jamie Day have got links, because I'm sure Jamie Day is someone as a footballer that came up through the ranks at Arsenal. Just looking at Larriman's age, I'm sure their paths crossed at some point, possibly not. I don't know for sure. But I think they as a management team are growing in the same way that the situation on pitch is growing, and that as a dynamic is going to gel, and that the whole piece now just seems to be kind of nicely coming to the boil, or so we hope. I think obviously the big risk moving forward is going to be one of not being complacent, and I think that's it's no surprise to me that the club didn't want to put forward a player to come and speak to us this week, because I think in many respects you don't want to set yourself up for a fall on Saturday, do you? Like, players come on, they're really buoyant, they're super happy, they're super bubbly. There's positives, isn't there, Chris, in some respects, having a player come on and talking like that. But equally, on the flip side of that, you don't want to kind of give the supporter base the feel that you're overconfident and then you set up for a fall in the cup on Saturday.
Exactly. Everything was just went so well on Saturday that you just need to stay grounded. Is probably the best phrase to use there. That just keep your it's Stockport have picked up again, so it's going to be a tough game there. And like we say, it's always nice to have a cup run, but it's not a bad thing as well to sort of keep it in house and whatnot, and let's keep our heads on the game.
Well, just before we move on to Stockport, and congratulations, we've mentioned him quite a lot on Saturday. So much at the moment is coming through our star man running down the right. His name's Romeo Hutton, and he's fucking dynamite. Excuse my French. Congrats, Romeo. Player of the month, 41.5% of the vote. And yes, I do want to hear that song dug out for Romeo Hutton at the weekend. I think he deserves it. Absolute belter. And his name fits, right? So let's use it. Romeo Hutton, ladies and gentlemen, is Swindon Town's Player of the Month. 41.5% of the online vote. We tip our hats to you, Romeo. It's quite clear that you are working your socks off, pal, and long may that continue. So interesting, guys. Moving on to Stockport then, away in the FA Cup. Interesting one there. So I was listening to the official Football League podcast with Mark Clement earlier today, and a very salty, initially salty, Nigel Clough was speaking about the FA Cup. And Mark Clement posed the question to Cloughie about, essentially, do you care, or is it a distraction? And Cloughie actually stated that actually it is a bit of a distraction for him at the weekend. So, I mean, really, how do we feel about it? I mean, personally, I want another Man City ASAP. What's the panel's view?
Love the FA Cup. Like, we saw what the sort of runs it created, like the City game last year. I always think back to the one under De Canio where we beat, I think it was Huddersfield in the first round, who were high league opposition, and then beating Wigan at home was an amazing game. Like, some of my favourite memories watching Town are in the FA Cup. So I always want to see us go for it and get to that third round and see who we can get.
Here,
I don't see it as a time. I don't see it as a time waster at all. I think that's what we watch football to see, those big games in the third round. More often than not, gives you a big game if you can get there.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if you look at the season, especially the way the season ended, you possibly argue that Man City was the highlight of the season. Max, would you not?
Yeah, I'd be tempted to say so. I mean, for myself personally, it was my first home game in about 5 years that I'd managed to get to, and just the feeling in the ground when McCurdy scored was like, that's one of my favourite memories ever watching us.
I'm not going to lie. Like, before the game, I had tears in my eyes at one point. Because you've got to understand, like, it's the first time I've seen the ground that full. I mean, even Exeter, when Doyler was back, we superseded that crowd by some. I mean, I grew up like watching images of, you'll all be aware of the black and white images of Chris Kamara, and there's a shot of the Shrivenham Road stand, and you've literally got 2 tiers like up and below, plus you've got people hanging off the stanchions at the front of the stand, sort of in the days of pre kind of health and safety. So I'd always grown up kind of looking at those images going like, wow, like, imagine what it would have been like at the county ground. And then for me to finally be in the Town End after all these years and see like that sheer scale of crowd where there was literally hardly any room to move. It was phenomenal. And like you, Max, when McCurdy hit the back of the net, I mean, it really didn't matter the scoreline, did it, at that moment? Like, it just did not matter. The result was completely... And I think having gone so close in the summer as well to seeing the club actually go pop, to then find ourselves in that kind of obscure juxtaposition of a 15,000 crowd, and we've just literally scored against like the champions, like phenomenal,
Like
right?
the best team in the world at the time, and I think it's the first. I think it's the first time I've walked into the ground and just like soaked it in for a minute. I think partly because I haven't been there for so long, but also just like the atmosphere on the night in the town, walking up to the ground and everything. It was just, yeah. I think it is probably my highlight of last season. It was just such a good night. But instead, Nigel Clough is looking forward to playing Fleetwood at home or something. Like, come on. I hate Nigel Clough. He's such a miserable old man.
Well, apparently Morfuni, good evening to you. Others said, we treated the League Cup and Papa John's trophy with contempt. The question remains, do we want a cup run? I'm going to put that question to you, Mike. Do we want the cup run, Mike?
Of course. I just wanted to echo everything that Max said as well. I feel like football's about moments, and the moment of last season was clearly the Man City game, at least for me anyway. Obviously, I respect it, only feels differently. But yeah, if we beat Stockport, get another big team, it'll just be another amazing day, really. So full steam ahead.
Helena, let's bring you back in. Do you want to see the men's team on a big fat cup run, and do you want to plonk yourself smack bang in the middle of it?
I do. We actually all went, like loads of us went from women's team to the Man City game, and it was so good. So yeah, maybe Chelsea this time.
If you want a bore fest, we won't score past them. They just park the bus.
Big Chelsea fan, so it'd be nice.
Well, wash your mouth out. That absolutely we get so well, Lane. So now you've got to drop that on us. But, Annie, what's your take?
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yep.
We really enjoyed it last time, like Lane said. It's a good experience to go to, and if they want a good cup run, they should go for it.
Joe, how about you, mate? Where's your heart at in relation to the FA Cup? I'm getting the impression that we really do care. Are you of that view?
Mate, I don't just want a cup run. I want to win the thing.
Hey, you want to go full Wycombe Wanderers, don't you?
Mate, 100%. Now, being serious, like a cup run at the end of the day, we had a comment there from PCM saying, obviously, the League Cup and Papa John's. The thing is, the money's in the FA Cup. You've got televised games in the FA Cup. It brings in money that we can use. Like we saw last year, we got, I don't know, I can't remember how much it was specifically, but a lot of money that went on to help pay the debts off that we've seen obviously been cleared this year. It's massive for football clubs. I think it's kind of why you see teams like Peterborough every year. They're going hard in the FA Cup. They're playing Man City probably every other season. They're on telly playing Man City. there's a reason why they're so successful in going up the leagues and getting promotions and doing well off the back of that. It's big for football clubs that are in our sort of divisions to get these cup runs and to get the money in through TV, and each round you get a certain amount of money as well for getting in. Obviously, my local team, Farnborough, are in the FA Cup first round this weekend for the first time ever, and it's massive. I think I'm actually going. I won't be at Stockport. I'll be checking my phone furiously. Trust me. But I'm going, and I'm going to be hopefully giving Lewis Ward some shit for 9 minutes and then giving him a hug afterwards. But there's 700 Farnborough fans, which is like 2 or 3 times sort of the amount you get for a National League South home game going. It's insane for the football clubs at League One and below, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's just for town fans, I'm not surprised to be hearing so many of us having enjoyed that plum draw, which was quite un-Swindon-like last season, wasn't it? You know, getting Man City in the circumstances that we did. I think it was such a memorable occasion. I'm not surprised that the tide is very much sort of like flooding in favour of positivity going into the weekend. Where's your heart, Ellis?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everyone on the panel. Why would you not want to play the likes of Man City? And like Joe, we got to win it.
All right then, Ellis. I'll put a slightly different question to you. So let's just say we dispatch Stockport the weekend. Do you want a more decent league opposition? Something a little bit akin to what we know, or do you want to play the lottery and hope for a non-league club with a view to plucking someone huge in the third round?
I wouldn't really mind either way, as long as if we beat them, because you've got the, you see it so many times. You come up against a non-league side, and you sort of underestimate them a little bit, and you end up losing. So it's not as easy as just saying, they're a non-league side, we'll batter them, because to be honest, the difference between non-league and League Two isn't as big as it used to be anymore. So yeah, as long as we beat them and then maybe get Liverpool in the next round, then I won't be complaining.
All right, we'll take that. Well, listen, let's take a. I've heard nothing to suggest that we're going to go with a second string 11 or treat the FA Cup with the same levels of contempt that it appears I say contempt, that's harsh. I don't believe it's contempt. It would be easy. That's very lazy for me to say that. We basically chose to use the Papa John's Trophy and the League Cup as the opportunity to get games into our wider squad. I don't believe that was done maliciously with any kind of contempt. The success of us doing that, obviously, is there to debate. Would I like us doing that in the League Cup, given we won it in 69? No. But if that means that we have a good run in the FA Cup and we end up winning League Two, I could not give a Scooby, irrespective of history in relation to the FA Cup. So listen, Chris, I'll take let's take a quick punt from you. Stockport at the weekend. Let's have a quick just give us a scoreline. What's your prediction?
2-1.
2-1. Lovely job. Ellis, where's your heart at, mate? Give us a quick prediction.
3-0 Town.
3-0 Town. Take that. Joe Vincent.
2-0 Town and Oxford in the next round.
Oh, yes. Oh, Max Springer.
3-2 Town and Bristol Rovers in the second round.
Oh, the idea of it. Oh, good Lord. Big Mike, how about you, mate?
I'm agreeing with Joe. I'm going 2-0, and I don't really mind who we get in the next round as long as we do them.
Nice. Lanes?
Coming off a high weekend, I'm going to say 3-0 Town.
3-0 Town. I'll take that. Annie Colston, what do you think?
I'm going to go 2-1 Town.
2-1 Town. Yeah, I'll take that. It's a tough one. I'll round things off by saying if Stockport decide to come out and have a go, it's going to be a little bit like my prediction for Mansfield at the weekend. I think we'll win by 2 clear goals. So I'm going to say 3-1 or 4-2 Town. I think we've hit upon a recipe to be scoring goals, and I reckon we're going to score a few. I think, and it's going to be a Jeffcott and Wakeling fest at the weekend. So that will do me nicely. Moving on, because we've got a couple of other bits and bobs to talk about here. And we did, and I'm going to mention, because they've raised this earlier, I believe it was our good friend Sound Trauma, raised the question of Sir Harry McCurdy was summoned into Edinburgh. I'm sure it wasn't quite as dramatic as some kind of courtroom drama, but Harry McCurdy was summoned by Hibernian to explain his comments about craving a return to Swindon Town. Now, it's interesting because I've been locked into last couple of days some really interesting debate with Hibernian fans. I think my view was I kind of saw this. There was going to be an incident like this. It was bound to happen sooner rather than later. Hibernian, you can argue, one of the big 4 clubs up in Scotland, certainly a very, very proud Scottish footballing institution in their nation's capital. I think we all know the pros and cons of having Harry McCurdy in and around your club, and he's a free spirit. And I think we as a club got the best out of him by just letting Harry do what Harry does and giving him an awful lot of leeway and entertaining some of his quirks. So your boy Harry has hardly kicked a ball, really, for Hibernian. He's only started 1 game in an absolute thumping at the hands of Glasgow Celtic, the other green and white monsters of the game north of the border. And Harry's been restricted to a bunch of substitute appearances where he's kind of not really done enough or shown enough to Hibernian fans for them to be kind of cutting him any slack, it would seem. So which of my illustrious panel wants to offer an opinion on Harry McCurdy? And because a lot of the Hibs fans were turning around to me and saying, hey, listen, somewhat predictably, this boy just wants to get his head down, doesn't he? You know, he doesn't know he was born. He's just come from League Two in England. He's been given an opportunity to play for one of the 4 biggest clubs in Scotland. You know, it's up to him to get his head down. That's wishful thinking, isn't it? If you're a Hibernian, supporter, guys.
Yeah, I had a quite strong opinion on this about Harry McCurdy and Hibernian. And to be honest, I think, as you said, this is something that everyone who's watched McCurdy play at Swindon Town could have predicted. You know, there's always going to be a certain level of drama, and if he's not happy, and if he's not playing, obviously he's going to act out. You know, we know that's who Harry is, but I thought the discourse around him online, the debate, has been really interesting, because some people are saying like he's finished, or he's not cut out for Scottish Prem football, and like I definitely do agree it is a step up. I don't think it's necessarily as big a step up as some might believe it is, but it is in my opinion a step up, and I believe he's got the quality to succeed there. I just feel like he needs to get his head right, get his head down. I feel like social media is something that he would be best to avoid generally. I mean, at the end of the day, he can do what he wants, but I feel like his best moments were when he wasn't really online too much and he was just focused on his football. So at the end of the day, I wish the best for him. I don't feel like it's a good idea to have him coming back. I don't feel like that's a realistic option anyway. I just feel like as people get nostalgic for the good times, and at the end of the day, there were a lot when he was here. So I feel like we all understand that. But yeah, I feel like he's got the ability, he's got the talent to do well there. He just needs to get his head down, stay off social media, and do his talking with his football.
I think it's interesting as well there. Mike mentioned the standard of football in Scotland. Obviously, Gav Gunning mentioned it last week. It's a weird league, because you've got 2 teams there that are arguably, well, they are not very good standard, but they're a Champions League standard team in Celtic and Rangers. And then you've got teams like Hearts, who are obviously playing in the Conference League. You've got teams like Motherwell, who are in the Europa League qualification rounds at the start of the season. They're a very good standard of football team. But then you've got teams like Livingston, or Dundee. Not being rude, but Livingston on the weekend had a home match against Celtic, and 3 stands of their stadium was full of Celtic fans, and the 1 stand of Livingston fans was like 3/4 full. And obviously, the standard of football at the lower end of that division is probably League One, bottom League One, top of League Two standard.
Joe. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there wasn't a Swindon fan that was in attendance at the last away game of the season last year, excluding Port Vale. When we all went to Warsaw, I think we all knew that we were taking absolute liberties by bagging half their ground and by having half their season ticket season ticket holders sort of essentially relocated into other stands. We all kind of knew we were taking liberties. That was all part of the fun. But yeah, it's a similar kind of thing, isn't it? Everywhere Celtic go.
It's the thing is, the bad thing is, from a sporting point of view, is that every team in the lower end of that division sees it as a payday. They play, because it's a small division. I think they play, is it 4 times, so twice home and away. So you've got Celtic and Rangers twice a season at home, and the clubs at the lower end of that division see it as a payday. So they almost sell their soul and have 3/4 of their own ground full of the away supporters, which from the start gives an already better side the advantage. It's just I don't, like I said, I don't really see the SPL as a particularly big sporting. I don't know what the word is. It's not great entertainment. It's going to win every week, but we have mentioned there you got players like George Best who played for Hibs. It's a historic football club, and Harry has got an opportunity to go there and do well. Whether or not he does well is kind of down to him, but it's kind of the story of his career, really, isn't it? Mike mentioned there, maybe it'd be interesting to get everyone on the panel sort of thoughts on a potential McCurdy return to the county ground, because I'm not too sure whether or not it counts in Scotland and England, but there is a rule that you can play for 2 clubs only in a season, isn't there? And he has played league games for us.
Well,
so
look,
would we be able to play for anyone else in England or Scotland?
I mean, look, just before we segue into that, I was just going to add an extra layer to what you're saying there, Joe. Like, the thing is, whilst it's not necessarily the most competitive outside of Celtic and Rangers, if you're a player and you go up there and you're a player with the natural ability that Harry McCurdy has got, if McCurdy actually makes it work at Hibernian and gets amongst the goals and gets the performances going and turns heads in the way that we all know he can, Harry McCurdy could be putting on a blue shirt or a hoop shirt next season, which could mean for him Champions League football. Yeah. Now, that for me is the opportunity that potentially is to go to waste. So if he was to end up coming back to Swindon, right, the pluses and minuses of the debate around Harry McCurdy coming back here, I just think it's a massive shame for him to have not necessarily had the opportunities to do what many others have done. I mean, Lee Griffiths is a great example of someone that did really, really well at Hibs and ended up taking himself off to the Celtic and had a glorious career at Celtic, won an awful lot of domestic pots and played on some absolutely enormous nights at Celtic Park. And, there are players that have done the same as well in the Blue Rangers. And for me, I just think that for me is a real shame. I mean, when Wes Foderingham left Swindon and went to Rangers, before Gerrard arrived, Fods was playing in some huge games north of the border. And he still managed to come back and get himself an opportunity at Sheffield United, where he's still playing at a really respectable level. So that for me, I think, is a real travesty. Would I want Harry McCurdy back at the county ground? I think it would be. I wouldn't want to see him in our starting lineup ahead of any of the players in the current squad, and I think that then rules him out of coming back because he's too expensive on the wages to be a bench warmer.
Yeah, I agree, and it's one of those things. You without Harry in the team or without Harry on socials representing Swindon Town, I can imagine it probably saves a bit of aggro in the background. Obviously, we've got a lot of love for Harry as Town fans. He was sensational for us. He was a maverick, a real character that captured the imagination of a lot of, especially young fans. But yeah, the thing is, you've got to just hope that he sees this as an opportunity for what it is, being up there with the weekly Sky Sports coverage that Hibs will get, the crowds he'll be pulling in to watch him play every week. It's a platform and it's a level that he needs to really step up and take the opportunity. And they say don't come back, but we know this show, we're happy to have you back. But in a football playing career, going from League Two to the Scottish Premiership, going back from the Scottish Premiership to League Two within 6 months, it's not a great look for him.
Yeah, no, it's not that at all. I mean, Lanes, Annie, from your perspectives, you're obviously players. You're playing under the umbrella of Swindon Town, playing for the women's football club. Do you have an opinion on McCurdy? Would you like to see McCurdy back in the county ground?
No comment. Only joking. It's hard, isn't it? It's like,
guessing for you, Annie, it'd be like watching paint dry, wouldn't it?
you took the words out of my mouth.
It would have been an absolute pleasure seeing Harry's expression as you knocked your fourth goal in, Annie, against Poulton. But I mean, in all seriousness, I think. I hope I'm not betraying confidences here. We spoke off the record when I first became acquainted with both of you ladies about that moment in time, and was it awkward and so on and so forth. And I think this is kind of thing. I think like most people realise like what he said was tongue in cheek. I don't think he was trying to be overtly sexist. I don't think he was trying to be overtly offensive in any way, shape or form. It's just the way kind of Harry is. But at this moment in time where the women's game was at that particular point of his development, it was a kind of really ill thought through kind of sort of comment, wasn't it? And to Joe's point about at times that must be off the field like a distraction that creates extra work. Is it really kind of worth it? I'm not going to ask either of you to give me an opinion as to whether or not you think it's worth it. But you can see the argument both sides, can't you? I don't know which one of you wants to sort of carry this point forward.
I think he's like, obviously we all know that he was trying to joke. He likes to be the class clowns. He was just trying to joke, but he's almost like one of those players that obviously you like when he's doing well for you. Like you can take his jokes, you can find his humour funny, but obviously at Hibs, if it's not going well for you, then they probably wouldn't find his Swindon comments that funny, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's good fun in a relegation battle inside.
Yeah. And I think the other thing as well is that I think if you probably have, if you're a big institution like Hibs, it's very easy to point the finger at little old League Two Swindon Town while they're there in their, relatively well-polished, Fir Park, isn't it, Hibs? But you're in your relatively well-polished stadium. You're competing, in a division that is called the Premier League. And little Harry has come up from League Two. The bloody hell do you think you are? Like, swanning around here, turning up. I don't know whether he's been turning up at training in his orange slippers and all of that jazz, but it is quite a step. And it can be pretty brusque north of the border in terms of people's opinions on behaving like that around a football club. So I think it was always going to be a big step for him. I don't know if anyone else would probably take one more opinion from you guys. What do you reckon, Max? Would you have McCurdy back?
Again, yeah. Well, you made the point of if he's not in the starting 11, then it's going to be an issue, and I think I would have him back. But again, you can't really drop any of the sort of front men that we've got at the moment. So it's whether we're willing to take the risk. I mean, it's one of those. You see what he did last season, all the goals he got, and he's a known entity amongst like the coaching staff. So it just depends if they could get him. Maybe the fact he's coming into a familiar environment, he wouldn't react as badly not to being out the starting lineup. But again, it's one of those. Is he worth the bother? I mean, we said it when the move happened that I never thought it was going to work out for him, especially under Lee Johnson. I think that type of manager isn't going to. We'll see the sort of stuff that McCurdy was doing on social media. It's going like, nah, I'm not having you. You're going to be doing that. You're going to be openly talking about leaving. I think that's maybe something that we would have looked at last season, and I mean, even that last season, I think would have been a step too far for a pretty lenient management team with him last year. So,
yeah. No, I mate, you're right. I mean, listen, I know Harry personally? No. Am I qualified to make any kind of judgments on Harry and his character? No. All I would say is that football is a very unforgiving environment. If when people don't necessarily know your story or know your story away from the pitch. Now, for all we know, there may be, a learning difficulty, or there may be mental health reasons that, that leads Harry to be the way that Harry is. And in that case, it's a question of, managing him appropriately, and then obviously giving him a certain amount of leeway and understanding. I genuinely don't know whether that is a factor, but I would propose that, if that is a factor, maybe if the game was a little more open to discussing that in an open environment, and if referees were more aware of that scenario, then that's something that could be managed within the game. Like, I genuinely don't know, but ultimately that's not the question we're asking here, right? And I think listening to the general consensus, it kind of feels a little bit like Harry McCurdy, thanks for the memories. It was beautiful while it lasted, but it probably ended at just about the right time, I think, for all of us. So we will move things forward. I mean, I don't think we'll go. We've got there's been a departure from Swindon Town in the last 7 days. So Harry Parsons has moved on loan to Chippenham, where he's had previous success playing for the Bluebirds. This is a big loan for Parsons, isn't it? I don't know which one of you want to kind of grab this and run with it, but every time we speak to a coach behind the scenes at the club, the line is always the same. Like, this kid has got an absolute, like, he is a proper player. He's got that nasty streak in him that all great strikers need. He's got that bit of snarl in him. We saw him pre-season, Joe. We said that he kind of looked like this could be Harry's season in the glimpses that we got of him, but it's just not happened for him so far this season, has it? And clearly he's not even fancy coming off the bench at the moment. So are we? Obviously, we wish Harry all the best moving down to Chippenham, but he's going to have to score an absolute ton of goals down at Chippenham, or turn in some big old performances to fight his way back into the first team picture, isn't he?
Yeah, 100%. I think, I've made commitments to getting Harry Parsons tattoos if he scores a league goal at Swindon. I just can't see it coming. I think it's probably about time for him to think about moving on and maybe dropping in to the National League or National League South permanently, having a season under his belt, and then going from there and seeing what his options are. I just don't think there's a place for him in our squad at the minute. We've got Luke Jeffcott, we've got Wakelin, we've got Shade, we've got Adeloy. If you're looking at attacking players, you've even got young players, obviously, like Cal Meadow. I can't see a place for him in the squad, even in rotation terms. It's probably about time that he looks elsewhere, I'd say, which is sad. Obviously, he's a Swindon boy. And you'd like to think maybe if he did well lower down the pyramid consistently, the option would be there for him to come back to Swindon. You've got players like a big one that Scott Lindsey mentioned on the show the other week, in Jordan Young. He was one of the best young players in the club. Got a big move to Wolves, I think it was. Didn't quite work out for him. Dropped into non-league at Chippenham. The Chippenham? Yeah, Chippenham. Yep. And he's smashing it. And Scott Lindsey said that, he went down last season to watch a game, and he was like, right, who's that number 10? And someone said, oh, that's Jordan Young. Obviously, he's literally coached the lad. And he didn't realise it was him because he changed in stature. He'd obviously grown. He's still really young. He's only 24, 25. Well, no,
I played five-a-side with him earlier.
What was that?
I played five-a-side with him earlier, and he's an absolute unit.
Mate, there you go. How old is he? Do you know? He's like 23.
Yeah, he's only young. I think 24. I might be wrong.
Honestly, that probably, from the way that Scott Lindsey was chatting about him, and the look in his face, I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Young pops up as a Swindon Town signing at some point.
Do you know what though, Joe? The concern is that you look at. I maybe wonder whether with Parsons, it's just, again, he's one of those players where he just needs another pre-season under his belt. I would hate for us to have a situation like we had with Scott Twine, and I think I could almost see him going to Chippenham, scoring a ton of goals, coming back with his tail up. And obviously timing's critical in football. He could come back, and I wouldn't wish injuries on anyone, but let's say, for argument's sake, we have 1 or 2 injuries in the first team, and he comes back off scoring 20 goals for Chippenham, and then he slots in, and before you know it, you've got another Charlie Austin on your hands, and you've got a similar situation unfolding got twine. And it's because in football, goals, like the ability to score goals, is just cherished.
I just don't
And
see it in him. I don't see. We hear about this nasty streak. You know, the only game that I say that I've seen him play it at length was last season. He started against Tranmere, and he played well, but he didn't look like a striker. He was running his absolute bollocks off all game, and the effort was there. But he's one of those players that he might score goals in pre-season, but I don't know if he freezes in a league game due to, you know, pressure or a certain amount of eyes on him at a particular moment. But he just never seems to go for it himself. He's never selfish on the ball. He always looks to play it on and sort of be away from the limelight. And I think that might be something that's holding him back a little bit.
I think another thing that's holding him back is the fact that all he's really had. I mean, I think you think the timing, right? You think of the turmoil we had when the ownership was changing, and he was one of the few pro contracts that we actually had. So then we had to have him in the squad as a bit part player, and then it's just been short-term loan after short-term loan. I think the mistake we've made is that maybe he's one of the ones you need to send to a National League or a National League South side for a full season. Let him get to grips with being a part of the first team and playing regularly. Because the thing that has bugged me with what we've done with him is he plays 7 or 8 games and then he's called back to not play again. So I think he's just not had a chance to really build up that much momentum. And yeah, again, it's similar to Joe. The only time I've really seen him play at length was the Tranmere game, and then it's just 10, 15 minute spells where he's coming on. And at that stage of the game, it's difficult. I feel like it's difficult to impose yourself, especially as a young player.
Yeah, I make you right, Max. In many ways, I think I was about to say before you spoke, it kind of feels like he's one of those players where his first professional goal is like an albatross around his neck. You know, what he actually needs to do is, like, you know, whether one goes in off his knee for us, or, you know, whether he goes and puts like 4, 5, 6 in the, you know, in the conference, or, you know, a little lower down League Two. But no, I'm with you. I think the thing is, I trust the view of people behind the scenes at the club that coach these guys. And, you know, the likes of Peaks, for example, said to me, like, this kid's got it, mate. Like, this kid has got what he needs to be a top player. And I watch sometimes I watch his move and I watch his style of play, and he does remind me of, you know, the man that was on the show earlier, Charlie Austin. That's high praise, and I'm not saying it's a like for like, but I think there are similarities in their game. Charlie was never lightning quick, and Charlie had that like nasty streak. And I'm told that it's similar kind of qualities, and I've seen it with my own eyes. You know, Harry's got similar kind of. He's got an eye for goal. He's got that nasty streak. You know, the coaches all talk about it. If anything, they've had to rein it in order for him to kind of make the breakthrough. So. But yeah, I'm kind of aligned with you, Max, on Harry Parsons. Well, look, I mean, look, some of the other stuff, I think we've, in the interest of time, I think we'll probably draw things to a halt. I mean, we've got some interesting topics of conversation that we could have gone on to. You know, one of the guys proposed that we talk a little bit about the potential for an EFL TV deal. I think just in the interest of time, we could probably spend an hour talking about that and the impact on our attendance on match day or otherwise. And indeed, there is the ongoing, call it uproar, call it dissent around the under-16 situation at the county ground. We're not dodging that conversation. More than happy to have it, just conscious that it's getting on for 11:30 and we've all got things to get up to tomorrow. Suffice to say, I think I speak for everyone when I say that it's a sad, we have touched on it in a previous show, and I think it's a sad day when people like ourselves that have been in the ground and not necessarily had an adult holding our hands at 15 years of age or under are no longer in a position to do that. Nonetheless, we understand the reasons for it. And I think the conversation between fans groups, us included, and the club, that conversation is ongoing, and we continue to publicise any breakthroughs that the club have on that. But listen, I go back to, you know, what I said at the very, very, very start of the show. A very unexpected return for me to the show, but nonetheless, very, very welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be invited back onto the show. And I just want to kind of mention again, you know, thank you to people that have reached out and had conversations with me, such as Paul Caddis and Charlie Austin, Andrew Hawes, who's been listening in tonight. Andrew, your words have meant an awful lot. CEO of Swindon Town, Rob Angus, Sir Tom Broadbent himself, Kev Metcalf at Verilogic, Tom Parrish at the Trust, Vic Morgan, Hoops and Jonah, and Les. And like I said, all of you guys that joined me on the panel tonight, thank you for your words of encouragement and support over the last few weeks whilst things have been interesting, shall we say. And just to reiterate what I said, anyone that's listening into this show, my DMs are always open. If anyone out there is having a difficult time and they're struggling and you need someone to talk to, please do reach out to someone that you trust. And please take the offer of my DMs are always open seriously. But listen, the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge is an independent Swindon Town fans Twitter space. It doesn't represent the views of Swindon Town Football Club or Sir Tom Broadbent himself. It's been an absolute pleasure having your company for the last 2 and almost a half hours. My sincerest thanks to Ellis, to Joe, to Chris, to Max, to The Voice, Mike, to Helena and Annie Colston from Swindon Town Women's Football Club, and of course to the inimitable Charlie Austin. And thank you to those of you that have contributed to the show tonight via tweet and via DM. It's been appreciated. We'll be notifying you guys tomorrow who has won one of the 3 hand-signed Dan-designed prints. So thank you ever so much for having me back. I very much look forward to catching up with you all very soon. Take good care. Have a successful end to the week. Looking forward to a successful Saturday. Come on, you Reds.